Good morning, Raptor fans. I hope you had a good sleep because that was not a fun game to even think about. Maybe it haunted your dreams. DeMar DeRozan going for midi pull-ups and Precious Achua grabbing 5 million offensive rebounds. After a game like that, the sky is falling. I'll reference a quote from Sam Presti. For 1 month of every single year, every team has a moment where it feels like you're never going to win again and everything feels like all hope is lost, but lost in the context of what was predictably two very, very tough losses for the Toronto Raptors, including a complete beatdown by the Sacramento Kings and the Detroit Pistons without Isaiah Stewart and Cade Cunningham. Is a very successful season in which the Raptors have exceeded expectations, won 42 games, and will presumably finish with above 45 wins. I think most of us would have taken it. And Medved's had saying this is like therapy. It's not really like therapy. What it is a clarification. And tonight, okay, I want to be clear about something. I have not slept yet. I have not slept. And I was up for 3 hours on Twitter Spaces talking to 9 people. This was not a matter of gaining an audience. This was a matter of having a conversation with people who were deeply invested in the Toronto Raptors and were up at all hours of the night thinking about what had happened, what this means, and what this means going forward. And like a lot of stand-up comics will do like open mics to test material. I think sometimes having these like 3-hour conversations to just just talk with other Raptor fans can sometimes be a great way to see what lands, what's missing, what people are thinking, especially when people are really smart in that group. And I think we had a really healthy group of people in that conversation. And if you needed any proof to know how big a Raptor nut I am, after a loss to the Sacramento Kings, do a 1.5 hour live, think about it for 30 minutes, hop on Twitter Spaces, talk about it for 3 hours, take a shower, get my morning coffee. Now I have my morning honey, and we're here at 6 o'clock in the morning doing a live for Raptors Nation, which is Pensare Basketball, the most ardent supporters of the Toronto Raptors. And in that context of that live, we started talking about a lot of things that I want to talk about in this live because I think it's going to clarify what the Raptors are doing a little bit better. We talked about the draft. We talked about the assets on the Raptors. We talked about the abysmal contracts. We talked about Scottie Barnes, his progression, what type of team you want to build around him. We talked about what the Raptors are even trying to do, whether Darko's a really good coach, whether we should trust Bobby Webster or not. This is a State of the Union address. This is a different than the preseason State of the Union. This is what we're doing because now we have a healthy sample size of games. We have 76 games of watching Brandon Ingram, Scottie Barnes, RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickly, Jakob Pertl, CMB. There's so much of my evaluation that if I knew what was coming this year entirely, I would think differently. I didn't know CMB was going to be the best Raptors rookie defender that I've ever seen. I had no idea. I thought he might be top 5. But to have him usurp Scotty, OG, Jonathan Mobo, Marcus Camby, so many good Raptors rookie defenders. Pascal Siakam was all right. Christian Koloko was very good. For CMB to be that level of defender, it changes my calculus. I didn't know that Grady was going to fall off a cliff like this, but I also can't tell you that I knew for sure that Jacoby was going to become this type of dog. I didn't know coming into the season I had hopes, but I didn't know Jamal Shed was this level of playmaker. I also didn't know that Jonathan Mobo's jump shot would be completely non-existent and he'd spend most of the year in the G League. There's a lot of things we didn't know coming in, but I also didn't know that the East would be this strong. And had I known the East would be this strong, I don't think I would have ever made a proclamation like the Raptors are going to win 50 wins. But there's a lot of teams in the Eastern Conference that have been great this year. Atlanta has been surprisingly good. Orlando has been surprisingly bad. Detroit has been unbelievably good. There's so many things that have gone right and wrong. And so now, 76 games in, as we head into the playoffs, I think this is a perfect time to reevaluate what are we doing? Why is everyone so confused? And we can start with your star player. Raptor fans are so divided on what Scottie Barnes is, who Scottie Barnes is, what he's going to be. People can't decide whether he's a top 40 player, a top 20 player, or a top 12 player. People can't decide whether he's a power forward, a small forward, a shooting guard, a center, or a point guard. People can't decide whether he can be the third best player on a championship team, the second best player on a championship team, or the first best player on a championship team. And if the guy you're building around is confusing people that much, Well, no wonder people are super confused about what the Raptors are doing. I think there's a lot of confusion about Darko Rajakovic. Is he a development coach? Is he a good coach? Is he a coach that can grow into this? Or is he not a good coach at all? Are the Raptors too nice? Do they need a veteran? Should they make a trade for a bunch of, like veteran players? Should they dump some of these young players? Is Grady going to be on a second contract? Is Trace Jackson Davis going to be here next year? There's so much to talk about here. So I want to condense my thoughts into basically going from the beginning, which is the hiring of Darko Rajakovic. And I want to take you forward into 2028, 2029. And I want to tell you how 2023 becomes 2029 and where we are and how we're doing, what we've messed up, what we've gotten right, what we need to get right going forward. Why am I, Pensare Basketball, Rob, why am I a good person to do this? There's a lot of reasons. I'll give you a few. Number one, unlike a lot of Raptors podcasters, I am very, very plugged into what the rest of the league is doing. That's a very important part of making any prognostications about what the Raptors are doing, because the Raptors operate in a league with 29 other teams, and it matters that you keep up with what other teams are doing. So that's the first thing immediately, because of my work with Players Choice, because of my deep curiosity for the NBA. I am probably, apart from maybe Esfandiar Barhani, who works for The Athletic, I don't think anybody else tracks all 29 teams as much as I do within this space. So that's the first, let's call it feather in my cap. The second feather in my cap is I do come from a finance background. I do come from a background that is deeply analytical. I have learned to slow down my thinking and speed up my thinking. And so by default, I sort of think more like a general manager than anything else. I think like a scout. I think like a general manager. I don't think like a player, and I don't really think like a fan. It's kind of interesting. If you ask ChatGPT, not suggesting AI use by any means, don't cancel me. But if you ask ChatGPT, who are like the most prominent Raptors channels? They'll give you four. They'll give you Raptors Republic, Raptors Digest. Wait, Raptors Republic, Raptors Digest, Hello and Welcome, and Pensare Basketball. These are the four prominent ones. Every single channel has fan run, fan operated, but Pensare Basketball does not have a fan operated anything, because I don't think ChatGPT thinks I'm a fan of the Raptors. In fact, a lot of Raptor fans don't think I'm a fan of the Raptors. I am, however, a fan of the Raptors, but I put my fandom aside. And I think because I put my fandom aside for the longer term goal of doing the right thing for this organization, I don't really think like a fan. I don't live and die on individual losses. I don't get super high when a guy has 20 points, 20 assists. Shout out to Fred VanVleet. I don't get super panicky when the Raptors don't have a center, and then get super excited when they finally trade way too much to get one, like Jakob Poeltl. And so I think because of the way I think, I tend to keep Raptor fans that are plugged into Pensare Basketball a little bit more clued into the longer term vision of this team. And that includes how young players will develop, who we're building around, the draft philosophy, asset management, things like this, I think are unique to our channel. I don't hear these things discussed very deeply on other Raptors podcasts. So if we're going to have a conversation about a long-term view and a reflective view, I think this is probably the best place to do it. And I think I'm the best person to do it. So these are all important things and a bit of a primer for what I'm about to say next. And shout outs to everybody who's up this early. Our audience is obviously not used to 6 a.m. lives, but once in a while, I like to do lives at this time because you never know who's up. And quite frankly, I have a lot to say. So let's get into it. When the Toronto Raptors when the Toronto Raptors hired Darko Rajakovic, it was an admission of a mistake. They had made a very big mistake by allowing their culture to erode, and they clearly had to redirect their philosophy and their timeline and their program. So it was about a program reset. It was hitting zero on a reset and trying to start over from scratch. And I do believe that Darko has had a lot of success in Toronto in terms of what he was hired to do. Now, what was he hired to do? I think what he was hired to do was to implement a new culture. That culture is selflessness, hard work, togetherness. But most importantly, and perhaps this is like the single thing that Darko was most hired to do, was to make coming to work fun for the players who work here. Okay? To the people who don't understand the psychology of workplace happiness, you need to look into how much Google, Meta, and bigger companies like Amazon, not so much Amazon, but Google and Meta have invested in terms of optimizing the workspace. Why do you want people to love the people they work with? Why do you want people to love coming to work every day? When people love coming to work, and you may look at this as capitalism schlop, but bear with me. If you love where you work, if you love the people you work with, you're more willing to work hard. You're more willing to sacrifice. You're more willing to stay long term. You're way more willing to put in extra hours. You're way more likely to be engaged while you're working. Why do companies offer stock shares to to employees? Because you want an investment. You want Jamal Shed, CMB, Scottie Barnes, Jacoby Walter, Brandon Ingram to feel a connectiveness to this group. This is psychology 101. How do how do people put their life on the line to defend their country? Well, clearly, they're crazy, right? No, not necessarily. They feel a patriotic pride. Now, you may be someone who is staunchly nationalistic in some sense, but if you're not someone who's nationalistic, somebody going and grabbing a gun and going to defend their country at the border sounds crazy to you. But these people have an irrational, at least to you, view on what they are protecting, which is their country. Why do missionaries go across the world preaching the word of Christ or trying to convert people to Islam? Because they have what would be seeming to you an imbalanced or extreme affection or belief in what they are protecting. For an organization like the OKC Thunder or the Toronto Raptors, or frankly, any team that is not a mega free agent destination, the first thing comes first. And when you're laying the foundation, making sure that people love where they work is the biggest thing that you can do. And if you want to talk about the Toronto Raptors championship, people loved being in Toronto. For the most part. People loved coming into work. You heard it all the time. Guys stayed later. The development program is obviously, the development of Pascal, OG, Norm. This is not a fluke. These players came into an organization where everybody worked hard, where DeMar worked hard, where Kyle worked hard. They learned from these veterans. They learned this is how you be a Raptor. This is how you be a professional. And so you want to recreate that. But how do you recreate that when guys are fighting for contracts like Fred VanVleet, when guys are fighting for touches, when guys are being selfish? Your culture erodes. So the Raptors' first mistake was from 2019 to 2022, they allowed their culture to erode. In 2023, they corrected that mistake by hiring Darko Rajakovic and saying, rebuild our culture. And while you're at it, develop our players. Now, the development hasn't gone perfectly. Jonathan Mobo still can't shoot. Scottie Barnes is still an inconsistent shooter. Jamal Shed is anyone's guess. Grady Dick looks like he's a complete flop. But lost in all of these failures, there are some successes. And they are successes as much as they are of development of scouting. And we'll talk about scouting later. There's 3 types of scouting. We'll talk about that. But over the last few years, the Raptors have had a few hits, very impressive ones at that. A big hit of your draft scouting has been Jamal Shed. You could argue Jacoby Walter is a flop if you only want to talk about the players that were picked after him, but I think we can all agree that Jacoby is probably going to be a top 8 rotation player when the Raptors eventually try to move towards contention. He is a player who is an insanely hard worker. He has developed considerably as a shooter, and if all he ever is a 6'5", long, streaky, athletic 3-and-D wing, you've done very well for yourself in a late first-round pick. He's not Keyshawn George. He's not AJ Mitchell. He's not Jalen Tyson yet. But hey, some of those guys are a little bit older than him, so give him some time. He was a true freshman at Baylor. He was a 5-star recruit coming out of Link Academy. Maybe Jacoby has a surprise pop. He wouldn't be the first player in NBA history to make a surprise pop in year 3. This is a part of the program, and Jacoby is a huge part of what you're doing. Jamal Shed has become a bit of a leader in just his second year, and I think that that's a big thing. Jamal Shed is a leader on this team. I think Jamal Shed was the best player on the Raptors team against the Sacramento Kings. He tried his best to will them back. A lot of people resent the comparison to Kyle Lowry. I don't resent the comparison. Kyle is one of my favorite players of all time. I love the comparison to Kyle Lowry. And while Jamal is operating in a completely different league than Kyle Lowry ever did, and it's probably more important today that a point guard can shoot and a point guard's a little bit big. I think Jamal plays a lot bigger than his 6 foot frame. And if Jamal is here for the next 10 years as a backup point guard, or I'm perfectly good with it. I love Jamal Shed. So I think that's a win. CMB is a huge win for your program, namely because he is such an impressive defender, but also because at South Carolina, he was a very impressive offensive player as well. Now, look, this is not a player who is ever going to average 25 points per game, by no means. But maybe this is a player who can one day average 18 and be the third best player in a championship team. The defense alone creates such an impressive floor that if you told me CMB had a better career than OG Anunoby, I would say no shit he did. It would be disappointing at this point if he didn't. That's a huge win. That's a 9th overall pick. And if you need any evidence that top 10 picks are not guaranteed, look at Josh Primo. Look at Jaden Ivey. Look at James Wiseman. Things could be a lot worse when it comes to your 2025 first round pick. I think CMB is a hit. Will he be the best player in that draft? Not a chance. Will he be the second best player in that draft? Not a chance. Could he be the third, fourth, fifth, or sixth best player in that draft? I would actually bet on him being at least a top 6 player from that draft. And you picked him at 9. That could be good. So, where does he fit? That's a question to be answered later, because maybe he won't be here forever. But he is a good asset. And he's the type of asset, especially if he can ever shoot, even reasonably. Like if he can shoot 32% on medium volume next year from 3, just from the corners. He is so valuable. So valuable. Valuable enough that he might be the third best player on a championship team one day. Or valuable enough that he could be traded for that player. So when Darko took this job, everything was stated as, we are rebuilding, we are rebuilding, we are rebuilding. But he had a really, really tough task. And I remember this one particular interview where he was sitting there and Masai was sitting there. And Masai kind of joked that, wait till he finds out what we haven't told him yet. And Masai never lies, right? Masai lies all the time, but Masai never lies. Even when he lies, Masai never lies. Masai's funny that way. He tells on himself all the time. He wasn't joking. There was a lot of mess. There was a roster with guys who didn't want to be there. There was a roster with guys who were desperately trying to get out. There was a roster of guys who were discontent with their new role. There was an ascending star that you desperately needed to rehabilitate his value because he was coming off an abysmal year. Scottie Barnes in his second year, it was really tough. And so you wanted Scottie to take a leap, but you wanted to preserve the trade value of Pascal, but you also wanted to trade, OG, but you had to boost his value a little bit. You had to feature guys. You had Dennis Schroeder as a point guard. And so the Raptors did a very interesting thing that year. They featured Scottie as their offensive engine, or at the very least, their top option offensively. They stood Pascal in the corner. They tanked Pascal's value. And I think part of that was they just wanted to get a view into Scottie. And I think whether this was explicitly said to Scottie or just implicitly understood, it was a tryout for Scottie. Are you worth building around? Are you the type of player that can lead an organization? Show us. Show us. Prove it to us that this is who you really are. And Scottie took the challenge. Scottie shot 40% from 3. Scottie worked insanely hard. He bounced back from a disastrous year. He became an all-star. And the Raptors, for their part, they were like, okay, I guess I think we're building around this guy. So what you should have done probably after year 1, you do in the middle of year 3. So already you get a few negative grades for taking so long to shift pivot, but congrats, you finally did. And so you trade Pascal and you trade OG, and we can all agree that maybe the return was not ideal. But by that time, I think the market had sort of priced you out, right? Everyone didn't want to deal with you. People knew you were desperate to move off of them. They knew you weren't going anywhere. Everyone knew you had to move them. There wasn't a great market. And so you end up getting the 3 first-round picks for Pascal. You end up getting Bruce Brown. That ends up being a dud. You end up, getting Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett, which wouldn't have been such a bad haul, except you overpay Quickley the next summer. And so maybe we can say at that point, we wish the Raptors had handled that part a little bit differently. But that's not a Darko problem. That's not a Scottie problem. That's a front office problem. And maybe the fact that you held on to OG and Pascal so long, maybe that was a Masai thing. We can all hope, because Masai's not here anymore. So we can all hope that was Bobby was saying, we need to trade Pascal now before the value tanks. And Masai's like, but I love him like a son. And maybe that's what it was. Maybe that's what it was. Or maybe it was the other way around. I doubt it though, because Masai was the one who was heartbroken over having to trade Pascal. It felt like Masai had to trade his prodigal son. You know, he had to trade the player that he won a championship with, that he envisioned taking the mantle, but never could take the mantle. And maybe it was Masai who was saying, I got to hold out for a better deal. That's my franchise player. And it was Bobby who was saying, we're not going to get a better deal. Who knows? Or maybe they were in cahoots. Maybe they both agreed. The point here is the return that the Raptors got for OG and Pascal, what they paid for Jakob, letting Fred walk. This is the hole that the Raptors dug themselves into. But you don't sit here and cry over spilled milk. You don't say like, well, we did this and we did that. No matter how tempting it is, no matter how tempting it is to ruminate on the past, no matter how tempting it is to say we coulda, shoulda, woulda, tanked for Wemby. Hey, man, if you had a podcast back then and you were screaming from the high heavens, trading for Jakob Poeltl is a mistake, congratulations, your name is me. Because I don't remember anyone else really very loudly complaining about that. So you don't get to complain now. It was a good idea at the time for a lot of people. We finally got a center. We paid through the nose for it. Let's move on. So now you have a center, you overpay him. You have a point guard, you overpay him. You have a shooting guard, and things don't go so well. In Darko's fourth year, let's just be honest, it was a development year. You have your draft pick finally. You lose your draft pick that one year. You do draft Grady Dick that year that you fizzle out in the play-in. Grady is not so great, but last year Grady looked good. This year he's out of the rotation. There's a lot that's gone kind of up and down over the last 1 to 2 years. I think most people's complaint right now, including very prominent people like Zach Lowe, Bill Simmons, people like this, talking heads who talk about the Raptors in the NBA and in the grander context, is that the Raptors roster doesn't make sense. Ingram, Barnes, Barrett, Quickly, Jakob doesn't make sense. And I think hopefully Bobby Webster kind of sees that. I hope he sees that. I hope he doesn't. I hope he wasn't walking into this season saying this is going to be a championship team. But this isn't supposed to be a championship team. As Darko said, we're putting in the foundation. We're building things up. Why trade for RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickly, Brandon Ingram? What do these players all have in common? They were all distressed assets. All of them were approaching free agency or were on contracts that were seen unsavory. Ironically, Ochai Agbaji was also seen as a contract that was unsavory to the Utah Jazz. They were ready to give up on him. Kelly Olynyk as well. You could argue Bruce Brown was also seen as something that the Pacers bought into, but ultimately flipped as contract filler. They didn't want him. So you keep taking everybody else's do not wants and thinking you're smart enough to see the value in it, and you keep striking out. Not because you keep picking up bad players, but because they're just overpriced. So maybe this is hopefully a thing that the Raptors can learn from going forward, is that you're overpaying for things. And once you overpay for them, you're locking in value that other people simply do not see in your assets. Jakob Poeltl was a fine center. The minute you paid him $20 million, he became a neutral asset to a negative asset. Now you've extended him for 27. He's an albatross. This is self-imposed harm. Emmanuel Quickly was seen as a very, very bright up-and-coming guard across league circles. There were plenty of teams that were looking to sign him in the offseason when he wasn't going to sign with the Knicks. He wanted 25 from the Knicks. There was some rumors that he might be getting offer sheets as high as 22, 23, 24. The Raptors trade for him. They choose not to risk restricted free agency. Why is anyone's guess? To be good guys? Maybe. Because they knew that the offer of 30 plus existed somewhere else? Possibly. Because they didn't want to risk someone paying him 35 and then having to restructure the deal around 32 flat? I don't know. But if you look at 32 million flat, what is it really? What's 32 flat really is about a deal that starts at 28 and extends up. So really, you paid him $3 million over what he was really asking for. Because when he was asking for 25 million, he didn't want 25 million flat. He wanted a deal that started at 25 million and ascended to like 31. So what you paid him is a deal that starts at 32 and ends at 32. It's a compromise, but one that has an optic bias baked into it. Perhaps. There's a lot of players who sign a deal that starts at 40 and ends at 50, right? By the last year of that deal, they're massively overpaid. Emmanuel quickly was overpaid on day one, and people crashed out right away. Would I have liked him at 25 flat? 100%. Could he have gotten more on the market? Probably. And at that point, the Raptors don't get to control the contract structure. So they overpay in the upfront and they think they're going to underpay on the back end because he'll develop. Has he developed? One could say maybe. Has he become a little bit of a better passer? Maybe. But it's not some resounding success. It's not a home run. It's not Norman Powell for Gravis Vasquez. It's not OG Anunoby, the 23rd pick. It's not Kawhi for DeMar. It's not that. It's not that type of home run. But it's not a terrible idea. Emmanuel Quickley is not a terrible basketball player. As much as I criticize him, he is still valuable asset for a winning team. Not at 32 million, but maybe in a couple of years with only 2 years left on his deal, that could be a contract you could move. Okay. The Jakob Poeltl extension, we won't get into it. That's horrible. That offseason, last offseason, I wish if they knew he was going to have the back issues, I don't think they would have done it. But the fact that they did it was largely to get him to opt into the 20 million player option because they thought they might lose him for nothing. He is an unrestricted free agent, so maybe they thought of it as insurance, but they paid so much for it that it is immediately an albatross contract. And I think everyone can agree on that. They're going to have to move a first round pick if they ever want to move off of him. But again, it doesn't really matter that this roster doesn't fit together necessarily. They're achieving some modicum of success this year precisely because very many parts of this roster do work together, namely Jacoby, Scottie, Jamison Battle. There's been some value had there. Jamison was an undrafted free agent. Let's not forget that. He is a lights out shooter, one of the best shooters in the NBA. You found him for free. That's a testament to your draft scouting. Jamal Shed, Jacoby Walter, CMB, again, to your draft scouting. Sandro Mamukelashvili is a very big hit, and I think he is an incredible ad. And if you can bring him back on a sum that is less than $9 to $10 million next year and get him to like 3 years, 30 million, let's say 3 years, 28. If you can get him on a deal like that, I think you're in good shape. There aren't a lot of teams with a lot of cap space this summer. Maybe someone will make him an offer for a full mid-level and you might lose him. However, that being said, there are a lot of free agents who are kind of roughly in his position range this year, and he's one of the better ones. You got him for a minimum. That's a testament to your pro scouting. Hopefully your pro scouting can continue. And, you look at guys like Tim Hardaway Jr., you look at guys like Jonathan Kuminga, Kristaps Porzingis, Kobe White. There's a lot of free agents this year. Who knows? Maybe you can sign and trade for one. Maybe you can sign one outright. If Mamu walks, maybe you need to sign 2 players into that deal. The cap is going to be 1 million less, so I think that's going to factor in a little bit. But regardless, you're not going to be adding a lottery pick. Lottery picks are expensive. You'll add a pick somewhere between 16 and 17. It's a little bit cheaper. You already lost 1 first-round pick because you traded it for Brandon Ingram. You lost a second-round pick because you traded it with Ochai Agbaji to the Brooklyn Nets. And so you have 2 less roster spots devoted to super young players this year, allows you to compete a little bit better. I think the broader point that I'm trying to make here is that this is not a perfect roster, and it's not supposed to be one. I don't even think coming into the season that the Raptors internally thought they were going to be a 46-win team. I think they thought they were going to be like a 42 to 43 win team, which they already are. They probably wanted to compete for a play-in spot or get the 6th seed or 5th seed and probably just get some playoff experience. Why get playoff experience, though? If you have no chance of a championship, why would you ever want to make the playoffs? If all you're going to do is get beaten in the playoffs, why make the playoffs? This is a loser mentality. This is a defeatist mentality, and this is a mentality that ignores NBA history. Michael Jordan had to get beat many years before he won championships. Shaq and Kobe went many years in the playoffs before they broke through and won a championship. It's very rare that you just put together a team and it wins a championship right away. Very few examples come in mind. The Boston Celtics in 2008 are like the only example that comes to mind. That Detroit team with Ben Wallace and Chauncey Billups, they grinded for years. Rasheed Wallace was the finishing touch. The Raptors team that won in 2019, they grinded for many 50-plus win seasons before they finally broke through. That included a lot of embarrassing moments. Embarrassing moments like getting swept by the Washington Wizards. Embarrassing moments like losing when you have home court against the Nets, the aging Nets. There's so many bad moments, so many bad performances, so many trade DeMar, trade Kyle, trade everyone. Serge is a bum. Jonas is a bum, et cetera, et cetera. But you just keep building. You keep building. You keep going with it. You keep flipping. You keep tinkering. You keep developing. You keep scouting. And then eventually you pray, as Masai said, you have one in Scottie, that you just get one more somewhere. Is that one more on this team? I don't know. It could be. Ojo Live said, Pen, you probably don't remember, but I did say last year we should tank one more year. I understand. And of course, there would be merits to tanking. There would be merits right now if the Raptors were in play for Caleb Wilson but I'll share a story with you that you may not know. It's the 2022 draft. I'm in the Detroit Pistons front office, okay? And there's a big board on the board. It says Chet Holmgren, Jabari Smith, Paolo Banchero, Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duren. And there's like four or five other names. And we slip. We slip down the draft order, and we end up with the 5th pick. And we're devastated. We're devastated because we really like those 4 guys. We think this is a 4-player draft, and we ended up with the 5th pick. Internally, we're cratering. We're crashing out. And then we get the favor from the heavens, okay? The favor from the heavens. Jaden Ivey, the player who is 4th on our board, refuses to work out for Sacramento, says he doesn't want to go to Sacramento. This is amazing news for us. But there's a rumor that Sacramento's going to take him anyway. They're going to tell him to fuck off, and they're going to take him anyway. And then draft night comes, and we're sitting there, fingers crossed, Sacramento, please take somebody else. Take Jalen Duren, take Keegan Murray, take somebody, but don't take this player that we think is a franchise-level all-star in Jaden Ivey. And the Sacramento Kings take Keegan Murray. The celebration in our war room right now is we just locked in an all-star, like an 8-time all-star, a quick twitch, dynamic guard who can finally pair with Cade. We're going to have the best backcourt in the NBA. Pick number 5, we are excited. We are excited. Jaden Ivey to the Detroit Pistons. He's in tears. His mom is in tears. We watch the draft unfold, and players keep going off the board. And we see 1 player, 2 player, 3 player, and we're like, wait a second. That Jalen Duren guy that we were super high on, he's slipping. And he keeps slipping. And he keeps slipping. And now we're calling. Who has the 10th pick? Who has the 11th pick? Who has the 12th pick? Finally, we see the 13th pick, and we make a deal with a rival team, and we say, if our guy is there, this is our deal with you guys. And at 13, we pick up Jalen Duren. We are ecstatic. Yes, we walked in with the 5th overall pick, which was a huge, huge miss for us. But we walk out of this draft with the 4th and 5th player on our board. This would be the equivalent of if in 2003, Pat Riley had walked away with Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade. This would be the equivalent if Jeff Weltman walked away with Jalen Suggs and Scottie Barnes. It's ridiculous. When you really think about what the Pistons pulled off, it was ridiculous. But here's the crazy thing. Let's say, hypothetically, that the 13th pick is not available and Jalen Duren goes 12th. You just passed up the 4th player, a 5th player on your board for the 4th player. The 5th player becomes an all-star. The 4th player is out of the league within 4 years after making homophobic comments on an Instagram live and has clear mental health issues and has had nothing but injuries. Do you understand what a crapshoot the draft can be? Do you know how many people I listened to tell me that the Raptors would regret trading that Jakob Poeltl, making that Jakob Poeltl trade because Rob Dillingham was the pick they gave up? And I was like, Rob Dillingham ain't gonna be shit. Rob Dillingham has been traded. Rob Dillingham's available. You want to trade a couple 2nd-round picks to get Rob Dillingham? You can get it back. My point is, Every single guard you're watching in March Madness right now, every big, you're salivating and thinking they're the next Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I promise you, 2/3 of the draft is a crapshoot. These picks are not all going to work out. The fact that your last two first rounders have worked out is a huge testament to your draft scouts. However, that being said, if the Raptors tank right now, which a lot of people are rooting for, like, oh, I hope the Raptors lose in the play-in. You're not fans. Honestly, at this point, you're not fans. If you wanted to tank at the beginning of the season, I understand you. AJ DeBonsa, Cameron Boozer, Caleb Wilson, Darren Peterson, this is a huge haul. But if you're right now saying, I watched this team work its ass off, I watched Scottie Barnes bust his ass, go top 10 in minutes, and I want to drop from the play-in to the lottery so that I can get a chance, like less than 1% chance. I'm going to get the 13th pick in most cases. Go from so the difference between 16 and 13 is minimal in this draft. To go from that to that and to miss the playoffs is nuts. Right? So this is the point here. You need to think about this draft as this is a deep draft. This is a very top heavy draft for sure. Like the top 4 or 5 picks could be franchise players, but not all of them will be. But there's a group after 5 that I think extends down to 14 that is very solid and includes guys like Keaton Logler. It includes guys like Braden. It includes guys like Kingston Fleming. And in that situation, if there's 9 guys in the next 9 picks, there's always going to be someone reach. Someone's going to reach up. Someone's going to pick a guy who's not supposed to be there. There's going to be one guy who's going to emerge. Like last year, Cedric Coward, Carter Bryant stormed up the draft boards. A lot of mock drafts had CMB going 16th, 17th. At 16, you're in a perfect net situation to catch the guy who dropped, provided it's one you wanted to drop. And like, probably you can get him. The 13th overall pick in 2023 was Grady Dick. The 16th overall pick was Keontae George. I didn't like Keontae George. Fair warning, I didn't like Keontae George. I was happy, but I didn't like Grady Dick either. I wanted Jordan Hawkins. You know what's funny? Jordan Hawkins sucks. I was wrong. It happens. I wanted Peyton Watson so badly. I was so mad we traded for Thaddeus Young. I was right on that one. You're right. You're wrong. This is a crapshoot. Okay. Even the smartest people in draft history sometimes get it wrong. And there's a chance the Raptors completely flop on the 16th overall pick, 17th overall pick this year. There's also a chance you draft an all-star at 16. And how much does your program change there? A lot can change. Let's keep this structured. Where are the Raptors right now? Why does this roster not make sense? Why do we go to the playoffs? Fun fact. The average NBA champion wins an trailing average of 52 to 54 games in the 3 years prior to winning a championship, which means usually it takes some scars, right? Usually it takes some battle scars. It takes some off seasons. And if you want to look at what a playoff exit, first round exit can give you, well, look no further than the 2013-2014 Raptors. In fact, if you want a more recent example, look no further than the 2024-2025 Detroit Pistons. This is a Pistons team that was marred in controversy all offseason because of the Malik Beasley allegations. They lost Malik Beasley, who was their best shooter, and they replaced him with Duncan Robinson, and they haven't missed a beat. They've taken a step up. That playoff experience was valuable for all their young players. They worked harder this offseason to get back to this point, and this is what you want for your team. You want to take a dip into the pool, right? You find out a lot about yourself. You find out a lot about your young players. If CMB shows up in the playoffs, you have some evidence here for something. What should we want to happen in the playoffs? That's something I need to talk about right now. We were on a live stream today. Sorry, not a live stream, a Twitter space. And ESPNNeedsIKD, shout outs to ESPNNeedsIKD, VIP member here. He said, I want Scottie to go out and average 24, 8, and 8 to show this front office that he is someone worth building around and to make them urgent. I said, I don't want that at all. Now, if it happens, I'll certainly celebrate as a Scottie fan. But if I could have my dream playoff outcome, what do I want to happen in the playoffs? Let me paint a picture for you. And I'm going to tell you why. And 39 minutes into this live, my rambling ass finally gets to the bigger point. Okay, this is probably going to go 1 hour tops. I say this now, and you're going to be watching this live later, and you'll be like, why is he talking for like, didn't he say at the 40-minute mark, this is going to go 1 hour tops, and then he's still talking 2 hours later? No, no, no. I don't have, I have to sleep. I have to sleep for at least 3 hours before I get on the panel. Otherwise, I'm going to die because they're going to roast me for the Raptors losing to the Sacramento Kings. Here's what I want to happen in the playoffs. I want the Raptors to reclaim fifth. That's a long shot at this point. They're probably going to be sixth or seventh, but I want the Raptors to reclaim fifth. But if they don't reclaim fifth, I want them to be seventh. I want them to be seventh for the draft implications, but also because I think the play-in will make them sharp. Okay. As much as I think this team needs a little bit of rest right now and Scottie needs a little bit of rest, I think the play-in is a really good tune-up for the playoffs. And I think the Raptors are a team that can surprise some people in the playoffs. No, you're not going to beat Detroit, especially if they have Cade back. No, you're probably not going to beat Boston, especially if Tatum is all right and they don't have some massive injury. But you could win a game. Maybe you could win two. What do I want to happen in these games? Well, obviously, I want Scottie to lock up defensively. I want Scottie to be great defensively. But I don't necessarily want him to have 24, 8, and 8. That won't be the barometer for success for me. I think one of the biggest reasons that Scottie has been assigned such a huge defensive assignment this year is because the Raptors are very deeply invested in his teammates looking good. I like Scottie playing the one because all of his teammates boost their numbers. So we walk into the playoffs. Scottie averages 16 points, 12 assists, 8 rebounds, 3 stocks. I'm a happy person. If Brandon Ingram averages 13 points, I'm going to be miserable. If RJ Barrett averages 12 points, I'm going to be sad. If Emmanuel Quickley averages 12 points and shoots 26% from 3, I might be inconsolable. If Jakob Poeltl gets played off the court and CMB has to start for him because he's getting so badly cooked in the matchup, I might smash my screen. The reason that I think that I am a good person to think the big picture is because I don't actually care too much about the immediate gratification of being right or wrong, or my favorite player is doing well. So I don't want my favorite player to do well at the expense of the players that I want traded. Are you crazy? That was the mistake the Raptors made in 2023. They featured Scottie to see if he was worth building around and what he could do, and he proved that he was, right? And then what happened? His teammates struggled, their numbers struggled, their trade value tanked because you weren't a good team. Dennis was tossed for nothing. Nothing. You got nothing for Dennis. You dumped him for dead weight asset and then you ate the contract. That's a player you just signed who later that season went for 3 second-round picks to the Golden State Warriors. Maybe you should have featured Dennis. Maybe you should have featured Pascal. But no, you had to see if Scottie was something, if Scottie was worth building around. So you wanted Scottie to become an all-star. Look, I understand the optics of Scottie fans feeling a need that, you know, if he has a good playoff series, we can victory lap on Evan Mobley and Cade Cunningham. And this is small stuff. Don't worry about that stuff. Scottie's not worried about that stuff. So why are we worried about that stuff? Fuck that stuff. It doesn't matter. CMB, he's not going anywhere. I don't need him to have a great series. You know who I want to have a great series? Every single player I want traded. I would love if Grady could get back in the rotation and start averaging like 10 points a game and start going on a heater from 3. That would be wonderful. I would love if Jakob Poeltl could get a little bit more mobile and start blocking shots again. I would love if he could average 16 rebounds a game in the playoffs. That would be awesome. I would love if Brandon Ingram averages 30 points per game against the New York Knicks as Scottie averages 12 and 10 assists. That would be fine. I'm happy. I'm happy with it. I would love if Emmanuel Quickley outplays the opposing point guard and shoots 60% from 3. That would be amazing. You know why? Because this summer, the one player you're not going to trade is Scottie Barnes. So how he does Doesn't matter. What his numbers look like doesn't matter. The, obviously, if he doesn't show up and he looks lethargic and he averages 6 points per game, we're having a very different conversation. But there's levels to suck and there's levels to awesome. And we're not talking complete wash. Okay. And by the way, just so we're clear, I have no doubt Scottie's going to show up in the playoffs. I have no idea. I have no idea what that's going to look like. I don't know if it's going to look like he's looking like Scottie Pippen on defense, Scottie Pippen on offense, Michael Jordan on offense. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know. All I know is bright lights don't phase this guy. The play-in, when we were in the play-in tournament last time against Chicago, this is the only starter who shot above 50% from the free throw line. I don't know what to tell you. Fred VanVleet shot below 50% from the free throw line. Scottie can't make free throws for Fred and Pascal. Okay. He took 13 shots. He had 19 points. I don't know what the fuck you want from him. Fred and Pascal took 22 apiece. Okay. So Scottie has shown up in the big moments. Scottie shows up against LeBron. He shows up against Luka. Shows up against Wemby. He shows up against these guys. His breakout performance in year 3, the All-Star year, was against Wemby. We forget that. His hallmark games in his rookie season were against Luka, LeBron, Giannis, KD. We forget that. Scottie shows up against the big names, big moments. I have no doubt Scottie's going to be great in the playoffs. But great doesn't have to be 24, 8, and 8, dude. Because this summer, the Toronto Raptors are going to have to make an internal decision on where they are in their timeline. And I'm going to assume that they're going to decide that they're not there yet. That this is not the go win championships next year. No, this is a slow build process. CMB is not ready to be the third best player on a championship team in 2 years. So, yeah, you want to get to the playoffs and you want to roll the dice. You think the Raptors are not going to be like, oh, no, we made the second round. No, they'd be thrilled if they made the second round. They'd be thrilled if they made the third round. They'd be thrilled if they made the finals. They'd be thrilled if the opposing team had a whole bunch of injuries and they just cakewalked to the finals. That would be great. So terrible for the other teams, obviously not rooting for injuries. But I'm saying, like, once you get to the playoffs, fuck it. Like, it's the first to 16. Go win. You're probably not going to win because your roster isn't designed to win. You have a lot of holes. But hey, man, we haven't seen the Raptors play like a really good team occasionally. You want to really buy into this? The Raptors can't beat good teams. Hey, man, we got smacked by the we got there's a person out there on Raptors Twitter being like, the Raptors only beat on bad teams, and I feel like the Raptors just took that shit and just said, here, we're gonna lose to the Sacramento Kings. I don't think it matters. But what I'm saying is making it to the playoffs was the goal so that you can get some experience. You can get your foot in the door. You can get these young guys some experience. Jacoby's going to grow from it. CMB is going to grow from it. Scottie's going to grow from it. But Brandon Ingram, RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickly, these guys, this could be a huge exhibition for them. I'll remind you, these playoff games are watched by everybody. These Raptor games, Sacramento Raptors, nobody's watching this. Scottie haters are watching this, I'm sure, but nobody's really watching this game. The numbers are numbers. But in the playoffs, if Brandon Ingram hits a big game winner to sink the Knicks, dude, the trade value just went up. Yesterday's price is not today's price. And you know what Brandon Ingram, Emmanuel Quickly, RJ Barrett, and Jakob Poeltl all have in common? They're all on the books next year. You know what else they all have in common? They could all be eligible to be traded this offseason. So when you go to the team like a Memphis Grizzlies or Sacramento Kings and ask for Keegan Murray or Ty Jerome or, I don't know, somebody else, Santi Aldama, when you go to the Miami Heat and say, what's the temperature on Bam Adebayo? What's the temperature on Tyler Hero? What's a sign and trade looking like for Norman Powell? When you go to, I don't know, the Dallas Mavericks and say, hey, that Kyrie Irving guy, he's pretty good. Najee Marshall, he's pretty cool too. Derek Lively, how are you feeling about him post-injury? Daniel Gafford. When you go to the New Orleans Pelicans and say, hey, that Trey Murphy guy is pretty cool. We could really use a shooter. Every one of these teams is going to have 3 numbers in mind. And keep this in mind, okay? 3 numbers. What is the player's contract? For Brandon Ingram, it's $40 million. For Emmanuel Quickly, it's $32.5. For RJ Barrett, it's $29. These numbers matter because that's what they will count towards your book. The second number that matters is what would I pay them based on what I see in them right now. And unfortunately, what you see on them right now is not just their numbers, but there's also a recency bias in terms of how they performed in the playoffs. Also, there's an optical bias of how the rest of the world sees them because there's a consensus bias in terms of like, oh, everyone's saying Brandon Ingram is back and Brandon Ingram's back. Emmanuel Quickly is amazing. If Emmanuel Quickly comes out and scores 26 points per game in the playoffs and shoots 70% from three, and the Knicks don't know how to stop him, well, I got news for you. His value just went through the roof. That's the second number that matters. The third number that matters is what do I believe this player will be worth 2 to 3 years from now or towards the tail end of their contract. So right now, if we do let's just do a Jakob Poeltl as our case study. Jakob Poeltl is owed 67, 67, 67 plus $80 million, let's say, over the next 3.5 years. He is very overpaid. I think an average team out there would probably pay him 8 max, 8, 9, maybe 5 to 10, somewhere in there. So his value is in the dumps. And I think the average team out there, if asked, what do you think Jakob Poeltl will be worth on the open market 3 years from now when his contract is close to done, they would probably tell you he'd probably be a minimum contract guy. That's how in the dumps I think Jakob Poeltl's contract value is. Now, obviously, there could be some elevation. There could be some teams that really value screen setting, really value offensive rebounding, really value connected passing. And so you might have some outlier teams that thinks he's worth 12, 13. My point is, there isn't a team that thinks he's worth more than 15 other than the Raptors right now. And if there is a team that thinks he's worth more than 15, they should be drug tested because he's absolutely not. So the number right now is he's being paid 20. He's going to be paid a lot more than that. He's probably worth 15 and he'll soon be worth 0. So when you factor in these three numbers, you average it out and then you basically do a subtraction of the number A, number C combined, divided by 2, and then you subtract it from the middle number, which is what he's actually paid. And there is is he overpaid? Is he underpaid? Prognosis. If you want to look at the exact opposite example, you can look at someone like Deni Avdija. Deni Avdija is being paid $13 to $14 million. He's worth about 30 on the open market, maybe 34, 35. He'll be worth around 34, 35 3 years from now. So an average team would probably be willing to attach a lot of first round picks to get that guy right now. That's how you build positive assets versus what the Raptors keep doing, which is negative assets. Do the same thing with RJ Barrett, who is a free agent next summer and could be eligible for an extension this summer. Do the Raptors maybe have a different opinion of RJ if he really shows up in the playoffs? I would assume not. But let's assume that if nothing else, he is a very, very competent starting level expiring contract that could be leveraged into something. Right now, if you go to, say, the Miami Heat and say, we'll trade you RJ Barrett for Andrew Wiggins, provided Wiggins, taps into his player option because we think Wiggins fits a little bit better. I think you're not going to get any picks back on that because they're relatively equal value players. So you're making a swap for a swap, and that's assuming the Miami Heat value what RJ Barrett does. But let's say the Miami Heat lose Norman Powell to free agency because he's too expensive. Now they're in a bind because they need scoring. And RJ Barrett is a scorer. So RJ Barrett's a $29 million expiring contract. We know the Miami Heat and the Toronto Raptors have a lot of frequent business. They do a lot of trades together. And this is going back years now. Precious Achiuwa, Kyle Lowry, and now, Davion Mitchell trade last year. This is a front office that the Raptors have a good connection with. So let's say, for instance, you go to this offseason and RJ Barrett's coming off a horrible series. Well, now RJ Barrett's probably worth 13 or 14 on the open market, but he's been being paid 29. What he's being paid 3 years from now is irrelevant because he's an expiring contract. But what if RJ Barrett plays like a $30 million player in the playoffs and he's an expiring? Now you might get a first round pick for him. You see, this is the whole point. So all of this 10-minute soliloquy to explain that it really matters how your players play in the playoffs. And the fact that you get to the playoffs immediately changes the value structure around your players. I don't care if it's a 2% boost, a 3% boost, or a 5% boost. Or maybe it's a 10% boost. Being viewed as a playoff player or a player that was contributing to winning as a starter on a playoff team immediately changes your value around the league. And I'm going to tell you why. Because people are stupid. There's a logical basis to it. Of course, it makes sense. You were on a winning team. You contributed to that winning team. Your analytics will probably be better than a player on a losing team. But the reality is, when you're winning, there's a leverage factor to it. There's also an optical bias to it. If a team is trying to sell RJ Barrett as a solution to their fan base, and of course, this is a business, right? Whether the Pelicans trade for him, the Kings trade for him, or whatever, he is a 25, soon to be 26-year-old. I think he's 26. He might even be 27. I don't know. He's 20. He's in that range. He's a 25, 26-year-old former Gatorade National Player of the Year, third overall pick. If he has a breakout playoff series, and he is seen as a major reason that the Raptors won a couple of games, suddenly this is a player that you can present to your fan base as the future. Not the franchise player, but a major, major win. Teams are very reluctant to trade more than they can justify trading because they have to explain it. It's a business. How would you feel tomorrow if the Toronto Raptors traded Scottie Barnes for Jalen Suggs with no pick equity coming back? I think you would crash out. I think you would lose your mind. I think you might cancel your season tickets. I think you might burn your jerseys. I think you might swear off this team. I think you might quit watching basketball because that would be an inexcusable trade. Inexcusable. Indefensible. Right? That's the point. There's an optics. This guy's an all-star. Change the optics. If Brandon Ingram comes out and averages 25, 26, 27 points in the playoffs after making the all-star team, after being healthy, he is worth so much more than the player you traded for a year ago. That's a win. Now, why am I bringing up asset value? These are players, after all. These are human beings. These are basketball players. These are athletes. Why am I not talking about them like athletes? Why am I not talking about them like ball players? Why am I only talking about them as assets? Because a front office must distinguish these two things. This is where Masai Ujiri often tripped up. You need to think about these players as assets. When you're thinking about business, you need to think about business. When you're thinking about personal, you need to think about personal. You need to separate these two things. You cannot think about both things at once. Otherwise, you get very confused. Then you end up crying when a player is traded. You end up, crying when a player is eating cereal because you drafted him. The sentimentality bullshit, it needs to be distinguished. Yes, you can be sentimental in sports. It's hard not to be sentimental about sports. You don't think I'm sentimental about certain things? You don't think I get emotional about sports? For sure. But business is business. And businesses, these are numbers on a sheet. As much as anything else, they are players, they're human beings. But when it comes to transaction time and trade time and championship window building time and construction time, these are numbers on a sheet. And the numbers matter. The analytics matter because everyone's wise to them now. The raw counting stats matter because teams need to justify trading for these guys. This is a guy who's coming off a playoff series where he averaged 26, 10, and 10. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's a fucking franchise player. Okay? Narratives matter. Optics matter. All these things matter. If Brandon Ingram comes out and has a Jaden Ivey-like rant right now, you're not trading him for the next 2 years. Congratulations. You're stuck. The optics matter a lot. And right now, I think there's a lot of people in this league who think Brandon Ingram is an awesome player. And probably if you could have told every GM last year that he was going to play 70 plus games last year, the Pelicans could have netted 3 first-round picks for him. But nobody could ensure his health. Everyone had this idea of Brandon Ingram. He's not a healthy player. He's not a healthy player. So what have the Raptors done? They've kept him super healthy. That's a win. If he comes out and averages 25 in the playoffs, you have a very, very good asset this summer that can be moved for value. Now, do you move him? Who knows? My point is, this player plays for your team and he's under employment for at least the next 2 years. You want this player to do well, which also explains why the Raptors feature Ingram as much as they do, why they give RJ Barrett as many touches as they do, why they give Jakob Poeltl opportunities when it's so clear that Colin Murray-Boyles is the better center for this team, why they continue to give Immanuel Quickley on-ball reps. Because Immanuel Quickley, you have to justify paying this guy $32 million. You can just go back in time and say you shouldn't have paid him $32 million, but that's hindsight bias. Right now, you're trying to build a case that this is an asset worth $32 million. Okay? This is no different than buying a house and fixing the kitchen to spruce it up. It's the same thing. If you give Scottie all the on-ball reps and Immanuel Quickley averages 18 points, if you put Immanuel Quickley on the bench, he develops a reputation as a bench guard. The $32 million contract becomes an albatross. However, If you think of it from the perspective of Emmanuel Quickley is one of the best assist to turnover guards, he's one of the best shooters in the NBA. If Emmanuel Quickley could have figured out the point guard position just a little bit better right now, maybe the Raptors are sitting there looking very good for paying him 32 million. And there's some team out there that's like he's worth 35. Now you have a positive asset. My point here is everything is about assets because this is about 2027, 2028. We are in 2026 right now, so we are very fast approaching the year that it will start to matter who's actually on this team. But in the interim, as we bridge to the bridge, as we go from today, where we are in 2026, towards where we're going, which is 2027, 2028, where Scottie Barnes will inevitably be the best player on a championship team. And Scottie Barnes may not be the leading scorer on that team. He may not be the point guard on that team. He may be the small forward. He may be the power forward. He may be the shooting guard on that team. But Scottie Barnes, in their mind, will be the best player on a championship team within a couple of years. That's when they want to be serious. But as you wait to get serious, can you get some meaningful experience? Can you get some meaningful development? Can you get some meaningful asset development? Can you make small tinkering changes? If you listen to an average Raptor fan right now, they want to trade 10 players off this roster. That's not how winning organizations work. You're not going to trade 10 players. That's how losers think. That's how Rick Pitino thought when he was running the Celtics. You don't do that. You need to make small changes over and over, repeat, and you need to win on the margins. I sound like Masai Ujiri. We're going to win. We need to win. Yes, you need to win these small exchanges. You need to win that Gravis Vasquez for Norman Powell trade. You need to win that, the Jalen McDaniels trade that netted you Davion Mitchell, which netted you the second round pick, that netted you you know, all of these things need to be like small wins. You need to get these little wins along the way. And I think that when you look at this from this perspective, the undrafted signing of Jamison Battle is a small win. Jacoby Walter is a small win. All of these wins. But also this summer, if you manage to trade Grady Dick to a team that is desperate to shed salary and you eat like 2 years of a different player coming back, and that player ends up being transcendent or amazing for you, then that's a huge win. And if Grady Dick does not pop off for the other team, that's a win. Like, this is all asset shifting and asset management. And the Raptors really at this point have to be focused on that. But you're not going to get it all back at once. You're not going to get a championship roster that you're desiring. A case study would be the Orlando Magic. This is something we talked about in in the Twitter spaces. Were the Magic right for trading that many first round picks for Desmond Bane? Well, ESPNNeedsIKD was reading off Desmond Bane's stats, and I regret, I'm sorry to say, I love Desmond Bane, but that's a bad trade. That's a bad trade. Do you know why it's a bad trade? Because the timing is wrong. Timing is everything in life, but also in basketball. In basketball management, timing matters. If you are going to make a trade for Desmond Bane, who is 27 years old and is on a close to max contract, you are starting the clock on being a second apron team, with the assumption that Paolo Banchero can be the best player on a championship team. You see, the Orlando Magic, they got a little bit greedy. They made it to the playoffs last year. They thought they were going to take an inevitable next step. They looked at the holes in their roster. They were like, oh, we can't shoot. And so they looked at Paolo, saw what he did in the playoffs, saw that he shot plus, 35, 38, 40% from three, and said, hey, man, Paolo, Franz, Jalen Suggs, let's add Desmond Bane to this, and let's go for a championship. The East is wide open. We just beat that team by 52 with Desmond Bane and Jalen Suggs and Paolo Banchero. Where's the celebration of that? But also, where is the examination of Jeff Weltman? Where's the examination of, is Paolo a franchise player? Where's the examination of, he might be one of the worst contracts in the NBA in a couple of years? Where's the examination of, you're building around the wrong guy? Where's the examination of, don't you wish you could have those picks back? Because you went all in to support a player who is a support player. There's something to be said there. Timing is everything. Some of y'all would love if we traded Brandon Ingram and 2 to 3 first round picks for Donovan Mitchell this offseason. Would you love it? Let me know. Would you love it? Would you love it? Let me know. True that. You might love it, but that wouldn't make it a great deal, because Donovan Mitchell is going to decline within a couple of years. And you don't make a deal for Donovan Mitchell for multiple first round picks. Like you don't trade Ingram plus 2, 3 first round picks for Donovan Mitchell until you're ready to go deep in the playoffs. And you don't want to be making a trade to go deep in the playoffs until you've actually wet your beak in the playoffs. You need to time it. The Toronto Raptors timed that Marc Gasol trade perfectly. They timed the Kawhi Leonard trade perfectly. They waited for their window. They were opportunistic. They struck when the iron was hot, when there was nothing to lose, when there was already a championship culture in place. You can't just add Kawhi and Marc Gasol and think you can win everything. That's the Clippers' problem. That's what the Clippers did. The Clippers had an established culture very briefly with Pat Bev and all those guys, right? They decided they were going to build everything all over again. So they dumped everybody. They got rid of everything just to get Kawhi and Paul George. And they thought, well, we have these two guys, we can win a championship. They have never made an NBA Finals with that team. And you could argue at that point, they just got two of the five best players in the world based on how they were playing that season. And they haven't been able to do anything because the culture, the infrastructure, the teammates, the support, the repetition, the continuity, none of that was there. You got to build from the ground up. I think the Raptors are doing it the right way. They've made mistakes, but their philosophy is correct. Their philosophy is very correct. What's Darko's old preaching? You need to learn how to practice, then need to learn how to play, then you need to learn how to win. The Raptors are still in we need to learn how to play mode. And yeah, I've talked about this before, but you can easily go up to Brandon Ingram and say, "You got to do it my way." But what does that do? It doesn't build culture, it doesn't build anything. It doesn't teach Brandon Ingram, it doesn't help Brandon Ingram, it just shuts Brandon Ingram down. The Raptors are a team that is doing the right thing in a world where doing the right thing is often very not rewarded. We want everything right away. I blame Amazon Prime for this, by the way. I really do. I really do, man. The other day, I placed an order online. It said shipment 5 days. I was like, 5 days? 5 days? That's forever. No, it's not. Yeah, it's forever when all your orders come within 24 hours, but 5 days is not long at all. We have a really, really big problem with waiting for things to jump. But the truth is, anything worth doing requires so much planning, so much execution, and time. You need time. You need time for players to develop. You think CMB is ready to be a mega rotation player on a championship team? The hell he is. Would he play on OKC today? Would he be an upper rotation top 8 guy on OKC today? No. Would he be a top 8 guy on San Antonio? Probably not. That's not to say CMB is not awesome. He is awesome. Would Jacoby? No. But in 2 years, these guys might be. And so you time it. You got to time your pieces right. Is Scottie Barnes ready to lead a championship team today? You think really? I mean, I'm not saying he can't be the best player on a championship team. Let me give you the championship team. Derek White, AJ Mitchell, Scottie Barnes, Chet Holmgren, Derek Lively. Off the bench, Dante DiVincenzo, Naz Reid, Ayo Dosunmu, Peyton Pritchard, Peyton Watson. Is he the best player on that team? Yes. Is that a championship team? Yes. Would it require the luck of God and the graces of God to draft a team and build a team that great? Yeah, it would. It would take time. It would time to acquire those pieces. My point is, yes, Scottie can be the best player on a championship team. That championship team would have to be fucking loaded. Loaded. He's not LeBron. He's not D Wade. At this point, right now, he's not even as good as Carmelo Anthony in his prime. Okay. But he's doing amazing things. Here's a really awesome fact for you. You may not know this. And you, not you, hold on. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? You, sir, you're going to love this stat. Are you ready for this, my friend? Scottie Barnes, I'm losing my voice. Scottie Barnes has dropped. Wow. Hold on one second. I have completely lost my voice. Holy shit. I have never lost my voice completely during a live stream. My bad. Scottie Barnes. I got so excited about something about Scottie Barnes, I completely lost my voice. Been talking for what feels like 6 hours straight. Scottie Barnes is the has had 10 or more assists in 6 straight games. Medvedted, are you ready for what comes next? Because what comes next is the jaw drop, mic drop moment. 6 straight games. 6 straight games with 10 or more assists. That is the second most by any forward in NBA history. History. Do you know who owns the record for the most successive 10 or more assist games in NBA history? Yes, seriously, Troy McDonald. Very seriously. I promise you, deathly serious. I researched this stat. Giannis. Not even close. Not even close. I'll give you a hint. He was in high school at the same time as me. Yes, sir. Although he was a senior and I was a freshman. But still, yes, that is exactly it. LeBron James. And LeBron James's record is 7. 7. And he did not, by the way, do it in his prime. Point forward Scotty. Actually, it's point guard Scotty Medved, because I will remind you that Ben Simmons' longest streak of 10 plus assists was 4. Ben Simmons was an all NBA point guard. There's a lot of great point guards that have never done 6 straight games with 10 plus assists. And dude, he is doing it with such subpar talent. You have no idea what you're talking about. So, the interesting thing. Oh, it's not about comparing, dude. He's breaking all of LeBron's records, though, because LeBron James has never had a season with this many stocks. If I recall correctly, I don't think he's ever had a season with this many stocks. And also, if I'm not mistaken, which I'm definitely not, he has a chance to break 2 of LeBron's records this year. So if Scotty has 10 or more assists in 2 more games, he will then be the solo owner of that stat. He will break LeBron's stat. And believe me, there will be a live celebrating it because I'm not a big LeBron fan. First. Second, he is the player, let's not forget, who ended LeBron's double-digit scoring streak, which was league history making 1,000+ games or whatever the fuck LeBron had done. Scotty blocked his shot. So, yeah. Anyways, back to the point. This little side glaze for Scotty was directed only at Medvedted, who insists that Scottie Barnes is not a point guard. Anyways, I genuinely don't care. I think I resent the fact that you keep making such a big deal out of it and you think he can't play the position. That kind of pisses me off. Like, if you had proper spacing and you had proper shooters and you had a stretch big, he could absolutely play point guard. Anyways, point being, pun intended, you're not building for next year. You're not building for this year. You don't need to go all in for Devin Booker. You don't need to trade 3 first-round picks. In fact, it would be quite impatient and quite impulsive and quite stupid to do that. And you don't need to win a playoff round this year. You don't need to be the 3rd seed, 4th seed, or 5th seed. You don't need to do that. What you need to do is get to the playoffs and get this young team on the clock. Because the second you make the playoffs, you feel that physicality. Jacoby feels the physicality. Scotty feels the physicality. Jamal Shed feels the pressure. You get that whistle. You get the intensity. Those games are experience, man. Why do people not value experience? There's a reason why certain people get paid millions of dollars to do the same job that other people get paid $10 an hour to do. It's not the same job because your experience level is different. The scale is different. You can be CEO of a lemonade stand. You'll be paid $5 an hour. You could also be CEO of Microsoft. You'll be paid millions of dollars every single year. But the Microsoft, right? He would be point guard if he was Magic Johnson that can't play defense. Huh? I don't understand that. Anyways, the point is you need to get the clock started. I know people want to tank. It's too late for that. So let's abandon that bridge and let's stop talking about it because the gap between 13th and 17th is not worth missing the playoffs. I'm not thinking about MLSE's pocketbooks. I can give a shit less about MLSE, Rogers, and the pocketbooks. I'm not employed by Sportsnet. I do not have a media pass. I do not need to pander to, the corporate elites. I can give a shit less. Okay. I care that this team have a chance in the playoffs and actually do well. I care that the players who we want to trade really do well. And I care that this offseason we do a few important things. One, clear out the clutter. That's the first order of business. Cut loose what does not work and open up space. That includes potentially trading players. That includes not picking up options. Trace Jackson Davis, anyone? I don't know. Grady Dick, too late. Already picked up his option, but maybe dump him for something. I don't know. Maybe give him another chance. I have no idea. This is going to be embarrassing if he's going to be in summer league in his 4th year, but hey, maybe he needs the reps because they avoided summer league last year. And I was like, yo, he's not above this. Maybe Elijah Martin takes a step up. Do we know this? I hated the pick at the time, but I've been impressed with what I've seen. I can change my mind. Elijah Martin's been pretty good. Pretty good. He's been great for the G League. I'll tell you that. The 905, he's been awesome. Maybe AJ Lawson is your breakout player. Maybe AJ Lawson is a late career, roundabout player who turns into something. I wouldn't hold my breath on it, but maybe he's something. Or maybe what is actually something is the player you pick in this year's draft. Maybe. Oh, please, no. No. Please, no. Brandon Ingram has a 1+1. Paolo has 4 more years. 4 more years after this year, 5 years. No way. I do not want Paolo Banchero on this team, dude. I compare Paolo Banchero to RJ Barrett, a bigger RJ Barrett. He is very similar. He is a shaky shooter, and he is a crappy defender. The fact that he's 6'10" does not move me at all. He's ball dominant. I don't like him. No. No, thank you. So this summer, clear out the clutter. That's step number 1. You're going to clear out the clutter. Prospects that don't work. Jonathan Mobo, make a decision. Jamison Battle, make a decision. Elijah Martin, two-way guy, make a decision. Is this a guy who's worth converting? Ulrich Shamshi, could he come back? Make a decision. Sandro Mamukelashvili, make a decision. Grady Dick, trade, no trade, make a decision. Okay? Do some internal calculus. Based on what you saw this season, the playoffs, practices, these guys have a lot of information that we don't. Make a decision. Is this guy going the right way, the wrong way? Do we need to cut loose? RJ Barrett, Manuel Quickly, Brandon Ingram? Okay. We're in a better position to leverage this year. Teams are feeling the pressure of the cap. Maybe we can take on a little bit extra money. Who knows? Okay. Do some decluttering, if you will. Clear up some space. Number 2, nail your draft picks this year. Easier said than done, but go at least 1 for 2 and ideally hit that mid-first round pick. Because getting another CMB level player is not impossible in this year's draft in the middle of the first round. I'll remind you again, CMB was widely mocked as a 14th or 15th overall pick. And last year, Carter Bryant went 14th, right? There's plenty of really good players that went later in the draft. Hugo Gonzalez was a 2nd round pick. Maxime Reynaud, Ryan Cockbrenner. These are all players who were available past pick 20. So picking 16th in a significantly deeper, stronger draft, I think should net you at least a rotation level player, which is more than I can say for what Grady Dick is right now. So at the very least, and who knows, maybe the Raptors pick someone who's 21, 22, 23, and it's an immediate contributor. I'm not saying they need to, but if Yaxel Landerberg falls and he, in your pro scouting, your draft evaluation says he's going to be the next Jalen Johnson, go get him. Cool. It fits. If Tunde Yesufu is the guy and you think he's an athletic wing who you can turn into the next guy, okay, cool. Go draft him. Reach a little bit. If Ade Mara is the type of center that you believe can be the center of the future, okay, go draft him. Work with him a little bit. Speed him along in the summer. But you know what's cool? These young guys are going to come into a team with Jamal Shed as a leader and Scottie Barnes as a leader and Darko Rajakovic, and they're gonna see that Jacoby works really hard, and they're gonna see Jameson Battle, and he works really hard, and they're gonna see Brandon Ingram, and he works really hard, and RJ Barrett works really hard because you don't have any bums in this locker room. You don't have guys who don't take professional pride. You have guys who work hard and generally try to play the right way. And that 16th or 17th overall pick is going to come in and they're going to learn that this is a place where you be a professional or you don't fit in. You know how hard it is to be the one guy who doesn't work on a team where everyone works? Do you know how hard that is? Try doing it. The next time you are at the office, try going in when everyone is super hardworking and super diligent, and that's the culture in that office. And try being the one asshole who just sits on your phone all day. You'll be fired within a week. You won't want to do it. We have a tendency, we're very social creatures. Again, this is an insight that I think is very obvious, but people don't think about. We are social creatures. As social creatures, we have a subconscious need to conform to our surroundings within some level of agreement. You ever been at a stoplight and looking at the stoplight, waiting for it to say walk, and you're waiting and waiting and waiting, and somebody starts walking and your feet start moving and the traffic is still coming, and you're just like, whoa, wait a second, what am I doing? This is the thing. We're deeply social creatures. When other people are sad, we experience sadness. When other people are working, we experience motivation. When someone comes into your organization and they learn what it is to be a Toronto Raptor, you want players like Scottie Barnes, Brandon Ingram, RJ Barrett, guys like this that are here, Emmanuel Quickly, who's a notoriously hard worker. You want guys like that to set the tone. That's how you change culture. And I am convinced that every player who has been drafted to the Toronto Raptors, that you're getting the maximum they could have been. You're going to get the maximum of what, and some of these guys are just not going to work because they're lazy or they're wrong for the sport, or your draft evaluation is just wrong. Like Grady maybe just won't work. Ochai maybe just won't work. These guys maybe are just satisfied to be NBA players and they don't want to go any further. That's cool. You made a mistake in the mental evaluation, but make it so that you know that your organization is so stable and your culture is so good that if this guy couldn't make it here, he wouldn't have made it anywhere else. Make it so it's like that, right? Make it so that you can be sure that your culture is not the problem. See, because with Precious Achua and Malachi Flynn, we'll never know. Delano Benton will never know. We'll never know if the culture was better, if Fred was a better leader, if we didn't have so much selfishness, if Nick Nurse gave more opportunity. Maybe these guys could have worked. But right now, I'm not thinking, wow, Darko was a better coach. Maybe Grady would work. I'm like, if Grady's not going to work here, he's not going to work anywhere. And that's what you want. Because even the best organizations, like the Spurs, are a great organization. You think they hit on all their draft picks? Malachi Branham a success? Was Jeremy Sohan a success? Every team has failures. Why do we pretend like we're supposed to go 100% in the draft when most teams can't even go 30% in the draft? That's stupid. The point here is that 16th overall pick is going to be very important, or 16th, 17th, 15th, whatever we draft. Very important that we get at least a key contributor on that one. If we don't get a key contributor there, hopefully we can get it with the second round pick. Who knows? Plenty of teams where the second round pick ends up being better than the first round pick. Plenty of teams where that's happened before. Maybe we'll be one of those teams. Maybe we'll be one of those teams. Or maybe they both hit, at which point you're sitting pretty. Let me change something for you. Y'all know I love Jacoby. I'm going to interview his trainer hopefully tomorrow. But I want to play a game where we get to redo the 2024 draft with the benefit of hindsight. And I want to ask you how you feel about the following core if this was your team going forward. I want to change the 2024 and 2025 draft with the benefit of hindsight, okay? So change number one, instead of picking Jacoby Walter at 19, we're now going to pick Keyshawn George. And instead of picking Jonathan Mobo at 31, we're going to pick AJ Mitchell. So now instead of Jacoby and Jonathan, we have AJ and Keyshawn. Okay. Flash forward to the 2025 draft. I think some of y'all will probably think that CMB is the right pick. Let's play along with that. Cool. CMB at number 9. At 39, Maxime Reynaud. Okay. We still pick Jamal Shead at 45. Now, how do you feel about this core? All I changed was 3 draft picks. I just made better picks. How do we feel about this core going forward? You have AJ Mitchell, Keyshawn George, Scottie Barnes, Colin Murray Boyles, Jamal Shed. That's your young core. Oh man, the Raptors are cooking. The Raptors are looking very good. That's the point here. You won't be surprised to know that Keyshawn and Maxime Renault are a little bit older than some of the players on your team. And so it makes some sense that maybe we don't know who CMB is until he hits 23, 24 years old. Maybe we don't know who Jacoby is until he hits 23, 24. Maybe, maybe. Jonathan Mobile's been a late bloomer his whole life. Maybe he has another gear this summer. Maybe he feels the pressure of keeping his NBA job and he develops a jump shot and he comes in next year and he's looking like Lou Dort. Do you know who the second, I've mentioned this a million times. The best Raptors defensive rookie I've ever seen is CMB. Do you know who the second best Raptors rookie defender is? Jonathan Mobo. They drafted them in back-to-back years. This is very impressive. Now, Jonathan Mobo being such a net negative on offense makes him basically unplayable on a team with spacing issues. But Mobo is horrible. Sorry. He's not horrible. He just doesn't fit with what we're doing right now. He's definitely not horrible. I think he's probably the second best Raptor rookie defender I've ever seen in my life. He is so impressive defensively. The analytics showed it. My eye test showed it. The film tape showed it. He's an incredible defensive specialist. If this was 15 years ago, this guy is a first round pick every time. Every time. But he's undersized. He doesn't finish strong at the rim. He's not a good jump shooter. The connective passing might be a little bit overrated. So maybe he doesn't work out in the NBA. Maybe he goes to Europe. Maybe it's one of those things where he has to come back like Anthony Parker or something like that. Maybe he figures it out a little bit later. Or maybe he figures it out this summer and he has the greatest, he looked really good in the G League. I don't know what to tell y'all. The Raptors evaluate G League tape. Y'all may only look at it from the NBA perspective, but the Raptors really care that Jonathan Mobile went down to the G League and he looked awesome in spurts. Do y'all not watch the G League? Some of y'all don't. I tried to watch as much G League as I could, and I barely watched 6 games. So who knows? Maybe Jonathan Mobile works out. He's a really hard worker. He's got insane athletic tools. Maybe he still works out. He hasn't worked out yet, but maybe he works out. Maybe he's a depth piece. Or maybe he works out on a second contract, at which point you're sitting pretty because you had him in your program, and maybe you get him like an Aaron Wiggins, where 3 years in, his contract runs out, you sign him to a really cheap extension, and he blossoms for you. That would be great. Jonathan Mobile could be great. I haven't seen anything that says he's not an NBA player. I haven't seen that. I still believe a little bit in Jonathan Mobile. My belief has waned quite a bit, but I still believe. All of this to say, we're in 2026 right now. We are in April 2026, and I'm talking about 2028. It's a long time from now. And over that time, you're going to make a lot of trades. You're going to make a lot of decisions. You're going to make a lot of draft picks. You're going to make a lot of undrafted free agent signings. You're going to make a lot of two-way call-ups. You're going to have a lot of G League rotations. And what you need is to look at this like a Rubik's Cube. How do you solve a Rubik's Cube? By the way, has anyone here solved a Rubik's Cube? Has anyone ever solved a Rubik's Cube with 2 turns? You're lying if you did, because you didn't. You didn't solve it with 2 turns. Building an NBA champion is a lot like solving a Rubik's Cube. And shout outs to my 80s babies, because you definitely had Rubik's Cubes growing up. And if you're a 70s baby, you definitely had Rubik's Cubes growing up. And if you're a 60s baby, then you probably had it as a teenager. My point is, Rubik's Cubes are really cool. And they're persistent and a very good example of patience. Patience and understanding and critical thinking. If you've ever played chess, right? If you've ever played chess in your life, you know that chess is a game of sometimes patience and slow thinking. You need to slow think this. You're not going to build a championship roster overnight after all the disastrous, moves that you made in the last 3 years. You're still trying to clean some of those up. And I'm not guaranteeing that the Raptors are going to win a championship in your lifetime or mine. I don't know how long my life is going to be. And I don't know how long the Raptors are going to have to wait to win another championship. What I am saying, however, is there are certain things that, let's say, create NBA champions. Good culture, defense first, togetherness, solid people, workmanship, institutional accountability, good development staff. There's a lot of things. Good pipeline, good draft, good people working in the head office, stuff like this, right? Like when you look at all the things that build an NBA champion, there's also luck, there's also superstardom, there's a lot of things. Man, the Raptors are so much closer than people realize to breaking through. How close are they to breaking through? Well, let's make a trade, shall we? We're going to make a trade right now. We're going to trade. Let's make a trade. Make a trade. Make a trade. Who are we trading? Who are we trading? Who are we trading? We're going to trade Emmanuel Quickley and a first round pick for Kyrie Irving. And we are going to trade Brandon Ingram, RJ Barrett, and 3 future first round picks for Lauri Markkanen and Walker Kessler. No, just Lauri Markkanen. Right? How close are you now? You're very close. You might be the championship favorite coming out of the East next year, given, the age of Derek White in Boston, given the age of James Harden. So you're not that far, especially if you hit on a draft pick. You'll deplete yourself of future first round picks. And I'm not suggesting you should ever do this, but I'm saying you're not that far. You're not that far. Yeah, sure. Kyrie Irving feels like a far cry from Emmanuel Quickley, but also, like, why would Dallas pick up Quickley? Well, he's a lot younger than Kyrie Irving, for one. Two, he's a lot closer to Cooper Flag's timeline. That's the second thing. The third thing is, I think he would probably fit very well next to Cooper Flag, and especially if they draft another guard who needs the basketball, having some spacing around those guys could make some sense. Also, since when has Dallas been like the beacon of smart decision making? They did trade Anthony Davis for next to nothing. They did trade Luka Doncic for said Anthony Davis. So this seems like a front office that's truly clueless, and maybe you can hoodwink them into giving you Daniel Gafford too. Now you have an athletic big. My point here is not simply that you should trade for Kyrie and Lauri. My point is actually that you're not that far, and you need to be opportunistic and wait for these things to come about. When you look at like what the Orlando Magic did with Desmond Bane, they started the clock on that second apron. They've restricted how much they can pay Anthony Black. They've almost completely forced their hand into having to make a choice between Suggs and Black. They've changed the dynamic of how long they can dip into that second apron without consequences. There's so many things. Again, I say timing. You gotta get the timing of the shit right. And so it is possible that you make the right trade at the wrong time, and it's just the wrong trade. It's just the wrong trade. If we let's just say, for instance, hypothetically, Toronto Raptors fans, 2019, you remember we had a lovely, lovely center, Jonas Valanciunas, and the Raptors were playing well with Jonas. They were playing well with him, and then Jonas got injured for a bit, and the Raptors continued to play well, and Serge Ibaka stepped into that role. And I remember then they traded for Marc Gasol, and I was genuinely, heartbroken, of course, at the moment because I love Jonas and I felt bad for him that he wasn't going to have a chance to complete what he started, but also love Marc Gasol. And I thought it was a brilliant trade. And I couldn't believe that people were actually upset about it at all. There were some people who were upset. They were like, I can't believe we were a first round pick. Jonas is amazing. Marc Gasol doesn't average as many rebounds. Some people are really stupid. Why do we have to break this up? We were doing so well. But what if the Raptors had waited to make that Marc Gasol trade? What if they'd made it a year later? So Kawhi is gone, Danny's gone, the Raptors are back, and now we're trading Jonas Valanciunas for Marc Gasol. The context of that trade completely changes. Now it's a bad trade. It's a totally bad trade. You got to do it the right time. And the right time was when you had Kawhi on the audition and you had a legitimate chance to win the first overall pick. This is the whole point. This is not a game of absolutes. This is a game of educated guesses and calculations. You can at best give yourself a 60% or 50% chance at something. The OKC Thunder are so dominant. They have at best a 50% chance to win a championship, if that. They probably don't even have a 50% chance to win a championship. And they've been the best run front office for 10 straight years. You know, the San Antonio Spurs have done such an incredible job. They have at best a 25% chance of winning a championship. And the Raptors, the year they won it, had at best a 15% chance of winning the championship. A 15% chance, and you won. That's impressive. And this is where I get to windows. The Toronto Raptors won at the edge of their window. They won at the end of their window. Kyle was aging out. Guys were getting expensive. You don't want to win at the end of your window. The Bucks won at the end of their window. I could argue the Nuggets won so somewhere close to the middle of theirs. But you really don't want to win at the end of your window. And the concept of windows really became apparent to me when I was watching the Sacramento Kings. Peja Stojakovic, Vlade Divac, Mike Bibby. I watched them year after year, rooting for my countrymen to win a championship. I wanted Vlade and Peja to win a championship just because I had a Peja jersey and I was a huge fan, but obviously because I wanted, honestly, people from where I was from to be represented properly because, you know, let's just be honest, 1990s were not a great time for Yugoslavia. And I loved how the Kings played too. Like I loved Chris Webber at the time. I loved Mike Bibby. I loved how they played. I was also kind of rooting for the Portland Trailblazers because I loved them. And so I kind of hated the Lakers because the Lakers always ended their seasons. And the point here is the Kings had like a 3 to 4 year window to win. As Peja was ascending and Vlade was descending and Webber was in his prime and Bibby was in his prime, that's the window. Very few teams are able to reestablish windows, restack windows like the Spurs did. The Spurs were able to go from the team of Duncan and Robinson to the team of Parker, Ginobili, and Duncan to the team of Duncan, Kawhi, Ginobili, Parker. Like they built 4 different iterations within the same iteration, and it was freaking amazing. I watched the whole thing unfold from 1996 onward, 97, and I got to tell you, that ain't for everyone. Most teams cannot do that. Is it me or as Pence might cut out a couple times? I hope it's just you. It shouldn't be cutting out, but I hope it's just you. That would suck. So my point here is that you have the situation where you have to establish a window. And I'm not saying you can't win at the end of it, but ideally you win towards the beginning of it so that you have maximum, right? So establish the window. 2027, 2028 is when your window will open. Toronto Raptor fans. At 1 hour, 37 minutes of my rambling response, sleepy, incoherent, probably blabbering, that's what I'm saying. This is where you will be. 2027, 2028 is when this window will open. That doesn't mean that you can't have a fluke run to the Eastern Conference Finals before that. You're not winning a championship this year. I would bet every penny I have that the Raptors are not going to win a championship unless Scottie Barnes is in fact going to turn into LeBron James overnight. You're not winning a championship. See how I left that little caveat? Because that's the only way you're going to do it. If Scottie becomes LeBron overnight, like prime LeBron, and he just starts going out there and he bully balls to the rim and he can hit pull away jump shots, and you're like, oh my God, where the hell was this guy? This guy's the most ultimate playoff riser in the history of the world. Okay, now you can actually win a championship. Barring that, there's no window to a championship for this team this year. That doesn't mean you can't make a surprise run to the Eastern Conference Finals. That doesn't mean you can't win a round. But anything you win right now is experience. Anything. It's not about championships right now. It's about experience. Acquire experience, move forward, rebuild asset bases. Then next year, we can get maybe a benchmark to the experience. We must make it to the second round and at least be competitive. So there's a new benchmark. There's a new thing to train for. Players train for a longer season. You practice for a longer season. You have less roster spots devoted to younger players towards the end of your bench. You don't give unearned opportunities to guys like AJ Lawson and Grady Dick and Ochai Abaji for all the year. Seeding suddenly matters a lot. You start load managing Scottie a little bit to make sure that he's not burnt out by the time you get to the playoffs because you're trying to do something different. Like all of these things are going to matter as soon as 2027, 2028, or 2026, 2027. But now 28 starts, and that's not that far away. We're in 2026 right now. 27, 28 is not that far away. That's next year after next year. Now, hopefully, your young players, Jamal Shed, CMB, Jacoby, guys like this, are ready to be competitive in the playoffs, which is to say they're in their third and fourth years. So now, right, just old enough. They've gone around the NBA a few times. They're stronger. They're more developed. Okay. Your player that you draft this year is in his third year or second year at that point, and hopefully a good one. You've made some meaningful, tinkerings around your roster to optimize things around the player you're actually building around. And maybe even at that point, going into that season, that deadline, that first year window, if you're ahead of schedule, now we can start making that first trade where you're like, okay, I'm willing to trade a first round pick plus this guy to get a reinforcement because this player we need right now, this player is worth it to me. That Dayron Sharp trade that everybody wanted to make for the first round pick, whatever, that's not a deal you make now. That's the type of deal you make 2 years from now, like 2 off seasons from now or 2 trade deadlines from now. That's the deal you can make to reinforce. That's the point, right? That stupid deal that the Raptors made for Thaddeus Young, trying to get reinforcements to the playoffs, that's the type of deal you do not make before you're ready to compete for championships. Did the Raptors believe that they were ready to compete for championships in Scottie's rookie season? I'm sure emotionally they did, but that was a mistake. That's a mistake. I could have called it at the moment. It's a mistake then. It's a mistake now. No, you do not give up a first round pick to move 10 points down in order to give yourself a slightly better chance of getting smacked by a slightly smaller margin in the first round. Doesn't make sense. Scottie Barnes is super young. You're not winning with a rookie starting. I'm sorry. No chance in hell where the Raptors are going to win that year. Kem Birch is your starting center. Precious Achiuwa, Chris Boucher is your center rotation. Joel Embiid and Giannis Antetokounmpo are in your conference, and you think you're going to do more than get out of the first round? Come on now. But again, the Raptors totally fucked that up. Totally fucked it up. Back to back trade deadlines. Gary Trent, Norman Powell, mistake. Thaddeus Young, mistake. Jakob Poeltl, mistake. We're still paying for this, by the way, guys. So this trade deadline was a breath of fresh air for me. Yeah, you got rid of a second round pick to get off of Ochai Agbaji. He was not anything to me. And honestly, I was just relieved they didn't trade a first round pick to make some random push because they were so excited they were finally a winning team again. No, man, we're okay. We're thinking about the long term. And in the long term, it's going to matter that your 3-4 moves every single year and your 1 to 2 moves every trade deadline, that at least 50% of these work out in your favor. And the ones that don't, that you don't double down. That's the point. And over some period of time of spinning the Rubik's Cube over and over and over and over and over and over, you will eventually solve it. And it might take 2-3 years to solve it. It might take 4 years to solve it. But eventually the pieces need to work. They need to align and the things need to settle into place. Actually, I've never thought about a Rubik's Cube or solving a Rubik's Cube as a metaphor for trying to win an NBA championship. But in a lot of ways, it is. But when you factor in the window, it's actually trying to solve a Rubik's Cube with a 3-minute timer. That's what it really is. Trying to win a championship is like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube with a timer. And the timer is, at what point do you hit critical mass? And at which point is it no longer sustainable for you to carry forward? For the Toronto Raptors, with, the Pascal Siakam, Kyle Lowry thing, it was as long as Kyle was still a serviceable starting point guard. That's as long as you could go. Yeah, you lost Kawhi and you lost Danny, but then Mark slipped. Now Kyle slips. It's over. It's over. You need to reset. You need to retool. The Raptors thought they were the Spurs. They were like, oh, we have Pascal. We have Fred. We can just retool on the fly. No, you can't, because you don't have Duncan and you don't have Manu and you don't have Tony and you don't have Greg. You have Nick Nurse and Pascal Siakam and Fred VanVleet. That's where I say sometimes your pro personnel can flop. There's 3 types of scouting. 3.
that really matter. Pro scouting. That's Mamu Kalashvili. That's pro scouting. That's literally doing your homework about the professional basketball players within the world. Pro scouting can also be Brian Colangelo identifying the unbelievable fit of Anthony Parker and Jorge Garbajosa when he took over this job. That's another example of pro scouting. If the Raptors pick up a center from Greece this summer that works and is not a disaster, that's also pro scouting. But if the Raptors sign Kobe White and he's the perfect backup guard, that's also pro scouting. Pro scouting is also shows up in trades, evaluations, finding gems, unearthing. Ochai Abaji from the Utah Jazz, we traded a first round pick for that guy. That's not great pro scouting. It didn't work out, right? Then there's draft scouting, which is your Jamison Battles, your Jacoby Walters, all these guys. Everyone that is not a professional basketball player falls into draft scouting. The third type of scouting might be the most important scouting of all, which is internal scouting. And this is where I say you need to rely on your coaches. You need to rely on every bit of data that you can find from your NOAA system to everything. NOAA system, people always say like, oh, it doesn't make players more efficient. Yeah, it does a very good job of data setting their entire shooting trajectory and all the shots they take, right? So it's a good way to track things, is what I'm saying. The internal scouting is what makes me think that the Magic made a mistake trying to get Desmond Bane to compete with Paolo Banchero, because it's a failure to understand that Paolo is not that type of dude. It also means sometimes, like the Daryl Morey situation in Philly, where you might give up on Isaiah Joe and then he goes on to blossom in OKC. You give up on Jared McCain, he goes on to blossom in OKC. That's internal scouting. If tomorrow we give up on CMB to move up 5 spots in this draft because we really love a guy, and then CMB goes on to be an all-star in 2 years, that's a failure of internal scouting. That's my point. The 3 types of scouting all have to work together. The Raptors need so many things, and they will add them as we go forward. If you don't realize this, but this is not a coaching staff that is designed to win a championship. If it were, you would have spent a lot more on your coaches. This is a coaching staff that came here to reestablish culture and help players get better, to make the atmosphere fun and engaging. This team doesn't carry itself like a team that's planning on winning a championship at all. And they don't need to. In grade 1, I'll end this because I can talk for the next 5 hours because I have a lot to say. And maybe I'm just spinning in circles because I'm delirious because I'm so sleepy right now. But I will say this. The worst thing that anyone can ever do to a child is treat them like an adult. I used to think that treating children like adults was a good thing, but that's not actually a good thing at all. It's terrible. I used to like approach any conversation with a 5 or 6-year-old to be like, I'm going to respect you like you can understand what I'm saying. But they can't understand what you're saying, man. They don't have the context to understand Socratic values and Plato and your random theory on macroeconomics. You might talk to them like they're an adult, but they're not a mini adult. A lot of people choose to treat children like they're mini adults. They say, why are you being bad right now? But the child is not being bad. They're saying, share. You're being selfish. The child has no concept of selfish. Like all 3 to 4-year-olds are freaking narcissists, right? You know that. They only think about themselves. So when you tell the child, when you shame the child, when there's 3 or 4 years old for only thinking about themselves, you're failing to understand that you're ascribing the morality of an 18-year-old onto a 5-year-old. And that's a mistake. There's a reason why you're not learning about trigonometric functions in grade 1. There's a reason why you don't learn calculus in grade 3. You don't have the building blocks to do that shit yet. Now, you might be a genius and you might skip some steps here, like a Scottie Barnes might skip some steps here, steps into the point guard role and immediately shatters the fucking record immediately. But apart from genius, you must give chance for growth. Scottie is not going to grow into the perfect leader or the perfect, consistent competitor overnight just because LeBron did, right? They did the same thing to coach Mark Jackson, blacklisted for being a devout Christian. He was not blacklisted for being a devout Christian. He was blacklisted in large part because some people believe that he had some very, very controversial views that do not agree with the left leaning feelings and sentiments of the NBA, which possibly includes, but is not limited to, his views on homosexuality, which, quite frankly, can absolutely get you blacklisted from the NBA. This is a business. It's not good for business when one of your head coaches has an issue with a really large part of the world. Like that's not cool. Okay? Hell no. Absolutely not. Okay. I'll address this as the final thing. Because of his religion is why his views are like that. Brooke, Jaden Ivey's views on homosexuality are not due to his religion. His outspoken views on his rants. I'll explain it to you psychologically. I'll explain this to you. You might pick up what I'm putting down. You might disagree, but I'm going to say it anyway. Jaden Ivey has been prized and promised a life that he will not lead. Okay. He has been told since he was 15 years old, 16 years old, 17 years old that he was probably going to be a professional athlete. And by the time he was 18 years old, he was being told that he was going to be a top 10 pick. By the time he was 19, he was told he was going to be a future all-star. By the time he was 20, he was told he was going to make like 50, 100, 200, 500 million dollars. His entire existence on earth has been defined by his unreal athletic gifts and abilities. Okay? So, thank you very much for saying this. That is exactly it. I don't like when people cry about freedom of speech when they are objectively hating or spewing hate against something. I may believe that one culture is awesome. That does not give me the right to put down other cultures as being inferior. You might believe that heterosexuality is your way on earth, and power to you. I myself am heterosexual. However, there are certain cultures in the world, including my own, unfortunately, but truly, that do not really promote very progressive views towards homosexuality and the LGBTQ community. And I got to tell you that as someone who grew up around a lot of Black people and a lot of Eastern European people, most of the people around me did not have very progressive views towards gay people. So I myself knew that if I, and you know what's kind of funny? And this is kind of interesting. So I had a lot of women in my life, right? So when I was, I say 15, I had some, let's call it effeminate qualities. I used my hands a lot when I talked. My voice was very high. It hadn't deepened yet. And what, you know, I could say my wardrobe was a little bit questionable at times, right? I didn't go as far as painting my nails or anything like that. But, and I always had a girlfriend. But there was this one time where someone asked me if I was gay. And I got very offended because I'm not gay. And I remember thinking, why am I so offended? And I remember one of my teachers sat me down and she said, "Robert, do you have a problem with homosexuality?" And I said, "I don't think so. I never thought about it. Like I don't think so." But then I remember thinking to myself, do I have any people who in my life who are gay? Do I have any people in my life who are trans? Do I have any people in my life who are lesbians? Or no, I don't. I don't have a single friend like that. And then I had to do a really, really hard check on the community I grew up around. Where did I grow up? What did I experience? What thoughts did I absorb? What rel- I I grew up in a Christian family. Orthodox Christian. Okay, did my church did my church say hate gay people? No, no, they did not. No, nobody said that to me, not objectively. But did I kind of get the clues from people around me that being gay was kind of not religiously okay? Yeah, I definitely got that. I definitely got that. I got that feeling. I got that feeling from my community. I got that feeling from friends. I definitely got that feeling from how they discussed people who came out. Oh, that guy's weird. Let's not talk to him. Why? Because he's gay. Okay. So you absorb that when you're young, as I'm sure Jaden Ivey did, right? And then you come to that point where at 18, you're confronted with one of your friends saying that they're gay. Do you continue being their friend or do you pull away? If you pull away, what is your fear? I have to say, when I was 18, one of the biggest reasons I wanted to work at Abercrombie and Fitch is not because necessarily like I loved retail. It's the only retail job I've ever had in my entire life. Is because I knew that a large portion of people that worked there were part of the LGBTQ community. And I wanted to be friends. I wanted to understand it. I wanted to understand them. I wanted to experience it. I wanted to get comfortable with it. And that was probably the first place where I actually could say I had a friend and she was queer. And now I have plenty of friends who identify as non-binary and there's no weirdness around it. Exposure is very important. I don't know if Jaden Ivey had that exposure at all. I don't know. I don't know. That is very weird. Yeah. I mean, here's what I'll say. What happened with Jaden Ivey, in my opinion, is this is a player who was prized as being an athlete for his entire life, and he lost that. And so now that he's lost that, he must regain prominence in some other way. And now he's going to get prominence for this. And I'll also say this, there's nothing that white society likes more than putting the spotlight on crazy people who are black. And I'm not saying Jaden Ivey's crazy, but I'm saying there's nothing that white media sources like more than showing a mental health crisis of an African American man. Nothing more. They love to give attention to an African American man having a mental health crisis. Kai Jones became so much more famous after he had his mental health crisis. Why? Miles Bridges. Why? Why is that so? Do you know how many players have had domestic abuse allegations against them? Do you know how many of them became as famous as Miles Bridges? Not many. Meta World Peace, Malice in the Palace. There's so many examples I can bring up. The media loves showing this image of any time an African American person does something that they view as outlandish, buffoonish, whatever. There's sometimes a pressure within African American communities that anything we do is a reflection of all of us. This is not something that I have ever felt. And so something, that's one of my black friends had to explain to me was this guy is reflecting on us. And I had to ask the question, well, I don't think about that. And he's like, that's your privilege. Because when a white person goes out and shoots up a school, I don't think to myself, oh no, that's going to be a bad day for me at work. I don't have that. So unfortunately, what's happening with Jaden Ivey is a mental health crisis, in my opinion. I'm not diagnosing the guy. I don't know the guy. But listening to what he's saying, it does not feel like the young man is right. And that requires help, not hate. Now, unfortunately, I think it is also within the Chicago Bulls' rights and the NBA's rights to sever ties with him. It's perfectly within their right. They are a business. They're a multi-billion-dollar business. And right now, he's really bad for business because a lot of your business is going to be aligned with, companies that have favorable or progressive views towards LGBTQ and Pride Month. And if you are employing a player, that's a liability. that player is a massive liability to you. That player is a massive liability and unpredictable risk to say things. Or, he said Steph Curry was a fraud because he's not really a Christian or whatever. Like, this is a person who is, and it's so easy to say that Jaden Ivey is unhinged, Jaden Ivey is crazy, Jaden Ivey is stupid. So is Kyrie Irving crazy? No. I think Kyrie Irving is extremely conspiratorial, but he's not crazy. And I don't think Jaden Ivey is crazy either. I think Jaden Ivey is going through a mental health crisis. Jaden Ivey spoke his mind. Uh, sure. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that there was some essay that he talked about as well. Like, there was some essay in his life that he also alleged happened to him as a young kid. That's the type of trauma that you need therapy for. I had a lot of abuse in my life, nothing SA, but a lot of physical abuse throughout my youth, and it took years and years to work through some of the damage that created. When you're young, the damage imprints much harder, and I can tell you that, you know, we don't diagnose mental health very well, and we actually do a pretty poor job of it. And I was really happy to see Darko Rajakovic wearing autism awareness, shoes yesterday. I thought that was really cool, because as someone on the spectrum, for me, I often find that sometimes I see people being bullied, like on a live stream or on the street or in an office, and they're so clearly on the spectrum, but they don't know it yet. I think they're on the spectrum because I can sort of see the signs, and they're just being bullied for being different or weird or whatever. Like, we have to understand that people have different minds, people have different experiences. I don't think Jaden Ivey deserves to be hated. I think it's sad that what's happening to him sucks, because I feel bad for him. I also don't support what he's saying at all. Being religious does not give you a right to hate people. If your religion teaches you that black people are bad, you don't get to say black people are bad, because that hurts a lot of people's feelings. And quite frankly, that's not freedom of speech, that's hate speech. That's where I'm at right now. There is this weird thing where it's like, this is a freedom of speech and it's my right. And it's just like, this also could incite hate, right? So, like, do you, like, okay, I believe that it's perfectly okay to have a stance that, for instance, I would never have a problem with you if you told me that Canada maybe needs to rework its immigration policy to be a little bit more discerning about the immigrants that they let in. Now, of course, I understand that sometimes talks about immigration are coded dog whistle for xenophobia and anti Indian, anti Muslim, anti Syrian, anti Middle Eastern talk. And I usually discern very quickly that if I'm talking to somebody who just hates Indian people, then there's no real point in talking to them about immigration, because I don't really want to have a conversation with you if you hate Indian people. I don't really want to have a conversation with you if you could ever hate any group of people, sight unseen. If somebody tells me I really hate Chinese people, I don't want to talk to you, because that's fucking weird to me. If someone says I really prefer Mexicans to black people, that's a really good sign for me to leave the conversation with you, because that's a really stupid thing to say. And you're free to say it, but I'm also free not to listen to you, right? You can have a preference that you think God created men for women and women for men, and you can say what Jaden Ivey said. Maybe that is your belief. I'm not here to cancel you. I'm not here to silence you. Say whatever the fuck you want to say. If you think that men need to be with women and the purpose of God created men to procreate with women, and that's your stance on it, that's cool. But the minute you express that stance as a public sentiment, please understand there will be consequences. And that's not a lack of freedom of speech. It seems counterintuitive, but that's not a lack of freedom of speech, because if your view is, I am a heterosexual male and I believe that I am within my right to do that, then that's cool. The minute you start saying that it is not righteous for the NBA to celebrate Pride Month, I have to ask the question, who the fuck are you and who asked you, right? It's not really like a freedom of speech thing, but it's more like a, like, don't bite the hand that feeds you kind of thing. Make sense? Like, yes, if you are an individual entity on the street if you are not an employee of the NBA, if you are not an employee of the Chicago Bulls, maybe. But as an employee of the Chicago Bulls, there's a base level understanding that you are being paid millions of dollars a year to play basketball, but also represent an organization that is worth billions. And I'm sorry, if Elon Musk does something crazy, Tesla's stock suffers. That's a consequence. But Elon Musk owns Tesla. Jaden Ivey does not own the Bulls. There is a point here. And a bigger point also is one of the reasons I empathize with Jaden Ivey is because, yes, he's being made an example of because he's not a star player. Yes. And I think the media will make this 10 times worse than it should be because he is black. Freedom of religion, I don't have to support Pride Month. You don't have to support Pride Month. You don't have to wear a ribbon. You don't have to wear a button. You don't have to put on a rainbow. You don't have to do any of that. But as long as you can be aware and you can understand that you're not supporting Pride Month does not have a right to infringe on somebody else to do so. So, for instance, you go to church, right? A Muslim person does not need to come to your church. A Muslim person can go to their mosque and be perfectly fine, just as a Hindu person can go to their temple, or, somebody can go to the synagogue, right? And as long as I respect that you have a right to go to your church and I have a right to go to my synagogue, we are okay. What I don't have a right to do is I don't have a right to walk into your church or walk into your house and tell you that you are practicing the wrong religion and that my religion is better than your religion. I don't have a right to do that. What do you think will happen to NBA players spoke out about Gaza genocide? I mean, look, man, like a lot of players have spoken, I think, pretty freely about free Palestine. I think many players have socially or publicly voiced their, opinion on that. If somebody voices their opinion to the counter, I believe they will probably face even more backlash. This is a politically charged statement. You have to understand, as a professional athlete, you are an employee of like, do you believe that Daryl Morey had a right to criticize China, right? For what they're doing with Taiwan. Yeah, sure, he had a right to do it, and the NBA, within their own rights, had a right to fine him, stop him, strip him, fine him, whatever. You might think that's not a freedom of speech. Okay, cool. You may think that, but again, within the corporate business, if you're going to choose to be an employee, right? I don't have a boss. Okay. But because I don't have a boss, I also make a lot less money. If I work for Sportsnet, I make more money than if I created my own content here. And also, I don't have to design my own thumbnails, and I'm probably not working at 6 a.m. to create content. If I work at Sportsnet, I work 2 hours a day and probably get paid $150,000 a year. I promise you, I do not make $150,000 a year. So maybe I should go work for Sportsnet. But the second I work for Sportsnet, I represent a corporation. I represent an entity, and I represent their interests as well as my own, right? Which means when I work for a company, their interests supersede my interests. That's how I view working for a company. If I work for Tim Hortons, I don't get to fucking tell people who are in Tim Hortons as a Tim Hortons worker that Tim Hortons sucks. And if I do, I probably should get fired. Right? The problem with this is that when you are a public figure, you don't have an off shift. Your entire shift is on. That's what I'm trying to say. If Jaden Ivey has views about the LGBTQ community and Pride Month and the NBA celebration of it, voicing those is perfectly fine, but you're going to get canceled and you're going to get fined and you're going to get and you're going to lose your job. And you know what? Do I feel bad for him? Sure, I do. Do I believe that the NBA had a right to discipline him? Of course. This is not only a corporate interest problem, This is also a social ethical problem. You're okay with somebody just simply saying that a month, like, how would you like? I'm curious, Medved, at this point. If the NBA celebrates Black History Month in February, are you okay with some white player coming out and saying, "I'm not okay with the NBA celebrating celebrating Black History Month"? You okay with that? Is that okay for you? We good? You all right? That to me is a little messed up. It's not a little messed up. It's messed up to hell. I wish the NBA just celebrated basketball. Well, people feel better about what they do when they believe that they are megaphones for greater change. I don't think he has an issue with gay people. He has issue with telling him what to support. That's cool. Well, here's the thing. Like, a lot of people get really mad at me when I ban them, right? A lot of people get super pissed off at me when I ban them. They'll be like, I should be able to say what I'm able to say, blah, 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 you know? But if you get super irritating in my chat, like to the point where every single time I see your comment come up, I'm like irritated by you, I'll ban you immediately. There's no chill with me. Am I doing myself a disservice? No, because I value my mental health, but also this is my channel. The NBA is their league. He is their employee. If you're someone's employee, honestly, to some extent, you're their bitch. Now, it may not be overtly written that you're their bitch, but to some extent, you're their bitch. You are beholden to their interests. And their interests are that their players not go online via IG lives and say unhinged shit like the NBA doesn't have, like, oh, this is absolutely insane, insane levels of false equivalence. If you look, Medved, like I listen, some of your comments recently are getting to the point of like I'm genuinely like thinking like what is going on with you? But in all sincerity, man, like celebrating Pride Month doesn't hurt you. It is a celebration of a historically oppressed group having an opportunity to express, like, can you imagine, like, do you have any empathy for that? Like, can you imagine the number of people throughout history who were men who were attracted to men, or who were women who were attracted to women, but had to live a life being married to somebody else because their society would not allow them to be married, or they would be shunned from their families? Can you imagine the struggle? Have you ever empathized with that? Why would you not want to celebrate the pride of that? That, like, to me, is objectively insane. How are you comparing this to the Chinese Communist Party? McLean saying, "Hey Pen, recently found your channel a month ago, and I'm very glad I did. I'm a Hawks fan who doesn't watch the Raptors, but with the race for fifth and sixth, I started getting familiar with them. That's super cool. Don't worry about it, man. I saw your comment the first time. I didn't flash it on the screen. I am reading comments as I'm, looking at this, but that was very thank you. I'm glad. And thank you for supporting us from the Hawks. If Israelis have lost their minds with their new hanging law for the Palestinians, the idea that they just made a okay, I don't have any thoughts on that. Historically oppressed, like African Americans. Are we doing an oppression Olympics here? Yes, black people were historically oppressed. Gay people have also been historically discriminated against. There is an oppression in that. I'm assuming you're heterosexual. I'm just going to assume. I apologize, right? If you are heterosexual and you woke up tomorrow in a world that forced you to be homosexual on threat of death, on threat of you're going to be shunned from your family if you are not homosexual, how do you feel about being with a man? Flip it around, dude. what is wrong with you? Like, no, honestly, I'm getting fucking sick and tired of this. Like, you want to be argumentative and you think you're smart, but you're not thinking this through. What the fuck is wrong with you? We're trying to equate gays and blacks. Where did I equate? Do you lose something by saying okay with Pride Month? Like, what sorry, I'm getting very pissed off. Maybe it's because I have not slept well. What the fuck is wrong with celebrating Pride Month? What is wrong with it? What do you lose by saying that I am celebrating Pride? Do you think God will shun you? Do you honestly think that? Do you believe your all forgiving God is going to hate you? Am I correct to assume you're gay with how much this is an issue for you? Oof. Dude, you're a longtime community member, but dude, I actually would like these are fighting words at this point. Why don't you call in? Like, I think we could talk about this and probably like, just talk it out. Cause this is sad, dude. Like, I remember the reason I remember you so well is because you've obviously shown this channel so much love. And obviously, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, all good, I'm out. As in you're gone, unsubscribe, peace. Is that what you're saying right now? I'll tell you why this is an issue for me. I know a couple. No, he's not a troll, dude. This is not a clear troll at all. This is a person, if I'm not, unless you're a fake version of the same person. I don't want to say your name. Australian Medved Ted. Is this the same person? Are you that person? Like, can you please confirm for me that you are actually that person? Because there's only one reason I'm giving you this much time and patience is because you have honestly supported this channel a lot throughout the years. So I am just trying to understand that you are actually the same person. Or are you some spam account that is just that's sad, man. Always sad. Well, you hate to see people leave like that, but I will say this. One of one of the I think one of the I think he was the first openly gay hockey player in Canada or in the world, period, in the NHL. Supports this channel a lot. And I've listened to a ton of his videos. Ton of his videos. Dude, the amount of issues that people in sadly in my country, the country I was born in, pride parades, like we used to hear stories of like pride parades in the Balkans sometimes ending with stonings and people throwing, you know, um, rocks at people and stuff. I will never support any ideology that oppresses a person from being who they are. Like, that seems so wrong to me. That's so wrong to me. I can't imagine. Like, look, I, I am okay. Despite what Medved Ted said, I am absolutely heterosexual. If you cannot tell that at this point, that's cool. I cannot imagine tomorrow that I live in a world where someone says I have to marry a man. I don't know how I would do that. So I have to empathize. I empathize from the other side. So imagine being a homosexual person that has to live in a world where you're mandated to be heterosexual. And then imagine that enough is overturned and enough rights movements are made and enough people fight to give you the right to exist without as much discrimination. Let's just be honest, not eradicating discrimination at any means. You're teased, you're made fun of, you're oppressed in many ways. Psychologically, you're oppressed by being the other all the time. Can you imagine what it would be like? I mean, I'm assuming a lot of you are heterosexual. Can you imagine tomorrow that you woke up in a world where you had to be homosexual in order to just survive school? You have to pretend. Don't let people find out you're heterosexual. Like, and again, this example is not going to make sense to you for one reason and one reason only. If you think, unfortunately, like Medved Ted does, that heterosexuality is right, then it's not going to make sense to you at all. It's not going to make sense to you. It will never make sense to you. But if you can't see the humanity, I don't know what the fuck to tell you. If you're so gone, if you're so hateful, if you're so, and yes, I do view it as hateful. If you are telling a person that they don't have a right to be with who they want to be with, I do consider that hateful. You think I'm a corporate shill? Do you think I'm brainwashed by liberal politics? I am not. I am just a human being that has empathy to know that if someone told me that I couldn't love who I wanted to love, that would be a really fucked up world to live in. And I can't believe that we live in that world because there's still so many places in this world that have a big issue with it. There's so many places in the world where people who are homosexual are targeted violently. Lots of violence. Lots of violence. People are discriminated on based on color, based on skin tone, based on gender, based on sexuality, based on caste. Caste is a ton, right? People are based on shade. People are based on religion. Like there's many reasons why someone discriminates against another human being, and I don't think any of them are valid. It's not okay to beat someone up because they're short. It's not okay to beat someone up because they're handicapped. It's not okay to hate on someone because they have autism. I don't believe any of these things are okay. I don't care about the politics of why it's okay or not okay. I simply care about the humanity of why it's okay or not okay. It's not okay to make fun of somebody because they have autism. WYSO with a very common sense statement says, as a heterosexual, I don't ever even have to pretend to wear the other shoes. It just seems so obvious that it's wrong to shun people and spread hate. Literally this. But unfortunately, I think sometimes for people who cannot, automatically arrive to this conclusion, we do need to have this conversation where we can say, all right, can we understand how much this would hurt you if this was your position? And again, I say this calmly and nicely. There are some minority communities in which being gay is a bigger deal than it is in most other communities. Like, for instance, if you are, I don't know, like I was just talking to my friend the other day who is Indian, and she was explaining how she came out to her parents as bisexual. And again, her parents literally grounded her and banned her from leaving her house for like years. They didn't want her to meet anybody. They didn't want her, like they said, you have to, they imposed a strict curfew. Like this probably does not happen in a Canadian household, but it happened in an Indian household, right? Like there's cultural views towards certain things, right? I I think it's sad that bigotry and hatred exist. I truly do. I truly do. But yeah, I will say this. I don't have any hate for Jaden Ivey. My first thought was not cancel him, fuck him. My thought was not that at all. I have a lot of empathy for Jaden Ivey and whatever he's going through right now, and I view it simply as a mental health crisis. It is what it is. It's a cry for help, and it's very sad that it's happening to a human being. I don't I don't think you need to hate Jaden Ivey because I don't think he's expressing hatred. I think he's expressing ignorance, and I hope that someone talks to him. I hope that he finds peace. And I'm sorry, genuinely, I'm sorry that he feels that way. I really am. I'm sorry that he feels that way. I'm sorry that he feels that celebrating Pride Month takes something away from him because I don't think celebrating someone else's existence or their right to exist how they want to exist can ever take away from anything. I don't believe that that's the case. I don't believe, like, again, if I hear a Basaki, uh, celebration, I'm not going to be like, who are these people celebrating on the street? It's cool. Be proud. Be proud. Be proud of where you were from. I'm sorry. Not, I'm not okay. I'm not okay with hating someone based on really anything other than the content of the character. If you hate someone because they're a fucking asshole, power to you. I don't like many people because they're assholes. If you don't like someone because they're a bigot or they're always late and you wanted to suspend your friendship with that person, cool. I have to tell you, there's a lot of people in my life that I came up with that I did not know were bisexual or queer or, you know, and I realized that one of the reasons that they didn't tell me is because they knew I was from a place in the world that maybe wasn't super accepting towards that. And that makes me sad. It makes me sad that someone who could be my friend didn't tell me that they were bisexual because they were like, "Oh, I didn't know if you'd still be my friend." I'm like, "Damn. Of course I'd still be your friend. What have I ever done that would make you think I wouldn't be your friend?" They're like, "Oh, because you're Serbian." I think that's sad. I think we need to change that. Personally, I do think we need to change that. Anyways, it's been an interesting conversation. It started out on basketball, ended up somewhere very different, and we lost a very long time member. And I'm sorry to hear that, Medved Ted. But honestly, I don't agree with you. Um, and quite frankly, all relationships are not meant to last forever. Honestly, if this is how you actually feel about the world, and not to call you out specifically, but if this is actually who I think it is, if you're the person who sent that Amazon gift, thank you for the Amazon gift, by the way. Very, very very nice of you. Um, but all this Scotty point forward stuff, all this, the pride stuff, the Christianity stuff and stuff, it's just like it's cool, man. We don't agree on a lot of things, and people don't have to agree on everything, man. Anyways, if the Raptors made easy shots that the offense gave them last night, they would have been able to win that game. Shot way too many front rim middies. Yeah, it also did not help that the other team shot a blistering hot percentage again, but it also, most importantly, it just came to we outshot them. They out hustled us. That's what it was. It was obvious from literally the tip that the Raptors did not show up with proper force and movement. And you can pretty much tell when this team is about to lay out a stinker. You can go back and watch every single game they've been blown out. It's a very predictable pattern. They show up, they have dead legs. I think it's worth noting, and something I did not note in last night's live. The Detroit Pistons are a very physical team. They will wear you out. I would be very curious if I could look at the team record of the team that faced the Pistons on back-to-backs. That would be a very interesting statistic. I would like to see OKC and Detroit, two of the most physical teams in the league. I would like to see facing that team and then facing another team on the back-to-back. Do most teams lay an egg? It's just, rebounding is effort. Defense is moving your legs. When your legs don't move, rebounds are hard to get. Trust me. Uh, I remember, one time I did squats, like heavy squats for the first time in a long time. And then I went to play basketball. Dude, I couldn't get 6 inches off the ground. So, anyways, I'll talk to you all later. Have a good one. I need to get ready for the panel, but I also need to sleep for 2 hours. But 2 hours from now, I'll be on the panel. So, I mean, this was a very interesting conversation, I guess. Dancing said Raptors need to bank more paint twos for rebounds. Yeah, I could see that. McLean011 became a new member. Shout outs to you for becoming a member, man. I appreciate you for becoming a member. We have a very lively member community. And I will remind you that as a member, you get certain perks. And one of the perks you get is Sundays only members live streams, which are super cool and usually an opportunity to deep dive into something film related or analytics related. And these things are very cool. Anyways, does anyone notice how role players on opposing teams always seem to have crazy nights against us? I mean, they're only role players to you because they seem like maybe outlier performances. But honestly, does Sandro Mamukelashvili or Jameson Battle not have like a crazy night against most teams on most nights? They could say the same thing, right? Again, it helps to view from the other side, right? The whole flip the perspective. I'll talk to y'all later, man. Have a great one. And thank you, Anna. Though we love to listen to you, you need to sleep, Rob. Yeah, I think I'm gonna get like maximum 1 hour of sleep. My girlfriend actually has to go to work today, and she's usually my safety alarm. So when I go to sleep super late, She's the one who will tap me at 10 a.m. to be like, Rob, the panel, Rob, the panel. And I am very worried that the day she takes a vacation, I'm going to sleep in on the panel because I am very bad at waking up from alarms. Typically, historically, I've been pretty good with it. But when I haven't slept properly, I will sleep through 18 alarms. So right now, I haven't slept at all since I did take a nap yesterday in the afternoon, like a fucking cat. I took an alarm like a baby. I took a 2-hour nap like a baby. So I'm not completely sleep deprived. But that being said, with how much I'm going to be trolled on the panel today, to go into this episode sleep deprived is truly the quintessential definition of self-sabotage. So if I crash out on the panel and I tell people to go fuck themselves and get myself canceled, you'll know what to blame. Me, myself. All right, talk to y'all later. Peace.